Chapter 447. Although the cloud continent in the tomb was a miniature version, it was still really vast. Zhong Shou and the few of them walked for 2 hours, but they only went from the center of the cloud continent to the south region of the cloud continent. They were already 60 miles away from where they entered. Zhong Shou and the others felt a slight chill on their bodies. A thin layer of ice appeared on the ground. Zhong Shou's eyes were filled with joy. As expected, moments later as the 4 of them went deeper, the ice layer became thicker and thicker. For some reason, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the surroundings had formed a small empty area in this place. Zhong Shou's body suddenly sped up. A moment later, one could see a pure black pearl floating high up in the air. It was at the center of the ice layer. The space near the black pearl seemed to be collapsing. The surroundings were extremely bright, only this area was slightly dimmer. Zhong Shou's face was filled with joy once more. It was this item, the legendary extreme dark chill energy pearl. He had never seen this item in the game. However, there were records of it in the legends of some cultivators. It was a spiritual item formed after 13,000 years due to the extreme Yin energy and thick earth energy in the tomb. Similar to the blazing glass pearl, it was a rare earth-grade treasure. One must not look at the chill around the pearl. Its name also had the word cold in it. Actually, it wasn't because of the chill that the pearl gave out. Instead, it was because the surrounding temperature was sucked away by the pearl. Roughly 17 years later, the sub-tomb of the first emperor appeared. Hundreds of Celestial Realm experts rushed over to fight for the treasures left by the first emperor. Naturally, they noticed the existence of this item. In the end, after a huge battle, the sub-tomb of the first emperor was totally destroyed. The pearl was also nowhere to be seen. Who knew who got it? This spiritual pearl was the most suitable item in his imagination. It could be used as a spiritual item for the Yin and Yang Dharma. The extreme dark chill energy pearl could absorb the spiritual energy within 1,000 feet. It could even absorb light and temperature. The blazing glass pearl was often born in the fire veins and contained shocking fire energy. At every moment, it was burning and giving out light and heat. It was perfectly compatible with his great son Yin-Yang Dharma. In the future, it could improve further. It could evolve into a layer of black and white holes. If he couldn't find it here, he could only find other items to replace it. Or in the future, he would have to buy it in other worlds. He would have to waste a lot of time. This item was magical and had the ability to absorb essence energy and true essence. Zhong Shou didn't dare to touch it. He took out a jade bottle and hung it in front of him. Then, he formed a seal and waved it. It caused this ownerless spiritual item to fly over and land into the bottle. The extreme dark frost origin bead was a spiritual item that had spontaneously formed within the tomb. There were no terracotta soldiers and horses guarding, and there were no restrictions buff. The process was simple and there were no accidents. With this item in his hand, he had completed his trip. Zhong Shou's expression relaxed. On the way back, he leisurely looked around. However, in the end, he was really tempted. He was so tempted that he was about to drool. However, there was nothing he could do about it. The treasures left by the first emperor were all scattered in this miniature cloud continent and were indeed really precious. On the way back, Zhong Shou personally saw 4 stone mountains made of grade 9 mind stones. There were also 4 that were made of grade 9 beast crystals. There were no less than billions of them. These were just the cheapest portion out of all the treasures. Pretty much each one was a spiritual item that Celestial Path experts couldn't get. Compared to these treasures, Zhong Shou's wealth couldn't even be compared to scum. Only if he could get those 4 mind stone mountains. He wouldn't need to worry about the expenses of Gantian Mountain these few hundred years. No wonder 17 years later, just the number of Celestial Realm cultivators who died outside of the tomb reached 30. Just as he was dazzled, Zhong Shou suddenly heard Chu Shui exclaim, "Young master, what is that?" The few of them all looked over toward Chu Shui. Then, their expressions became really interesting. In the middle of a silver lake, there was a golden lotus floating on the surface of the lake. Within the lake, there was actually no water, it was all silver-colored liquid. Who knows how, but it gave birth to a golden lotus. Zhong Shou's expression changed. In the end, he took in a deep breath. This is the Godlight purple gold lotus. His first thought was, why would there be such a thing in the tomb of the first emperor? Legend had it that it needed to be in a place where metal energy gathered and also had to be filled with thick killing energy to be able to give birth to it. In this tomb, the latter condition wasn't bad. Only the first one didn't have much gung metal energy. Among the many spiritual items in the founding emperor's subtomb, this item wasn't considered too precious. Coincidentally, it was something that the few of them could use. The lotus leaves of the Godlight purple gold lotus could be used to craft spiritual and magical weapons. The most important thing was the lotus seed. It was recognized by the cultivation world as the best spiritual item to train the body and bones. Similar to that, it had the ability to reshape the body. In terms of effect, it was above the muscle growth jade that Hanfang gave him. That was because the spiritual formation restrictions within were constantly changing. The path that Zhong Shou chose to return was much further away from the one he came from. He didn't expect that he would bump into such a thing. Looking around, Zhong Shou knew that this item was the same as the extreme dark chill energy pearl, naturally formed in the tomb. However, different from the latter, this Godlight purple gold lotus was coincidentally on the core of a spiritual formation. Observing closely for a moment, Zhong Shou could only laugh bitterly. He had pretty much given up hope of obtaining this item. Although there weren't any terracotta soldiers guarding this place, it was impossible to take the Godlight purple golden lotus without triggering the restriction. Shaking his head, Zhong Shou was about to leave. However, in the next instance, he saw a black shadow dashing over from the distance. It was extremely quick, and in just a moment it had rushed over. However, it didn't dare to get close to Zhong Shou and the others, only guarding near the Godlight purple gold lotus. It looked over warily. Its bloody mouth opened slightly as it gave out a threatening roar. It didn't have a physical form, its body was illusionary as it floated above the mercury. "This is a black Qilin beast?" Zhong Shou stopped in his tracks and looked over in shock. He saw that the black shadow was like a leopard but not a leopard, like a tiger but not a tiger, its body giving off a black mist. Pretty much all the dirt it came into contact with showed signs of turning into sand. Zhong Shou took a closer look. The area around the lake had indeed turned into sand and dust. In legends, there were many types of Qilins, most of them representing good omens. Often when they appeared, they would cause the earth to have a bountiful harvest. This was because Qilins were born to make the earth fertile and nourish the earth. Only a black Qilin was different. Everywhere it passed, the earth would lose all its energy and turn into sand and stone. To earth element spiritual energy it was totally stealing. This was why the human race during the Cloud Desolate era saw it as a fierce beast, a bad omen. Each time it appeared, a huge calamity would descend. This black Qilin beast obviously obtained the bloodline of the black Qilin. For some unknown reason, it lost its body and turned into a Class 7 soul beast. Who knows how it came in? It was guarding this place to borrow the power of the purple gold lotus to reform its body. Unfortunately, although the purple lotus had matured, it seemed to have borne many seeds. However, this black Qilin had some intelligence. It knew how strong it was and didn't dare to touch the spiritual formation restrictions here. Zhong Shou's eyes were filled with uncertainty. If it was just one purple gold lotus, then it was okay. Although the lotus seed was precious, he cared more about his life. However, he had to pay attention to this black Qilin beast. If he missed this chance, who knows when he would be able to meet a beast with the bloodline of the black Qilin god beast. Unfortunately, although Zhong Shou had the confidence to win, this beast had nothing to do with the sub-tomb of the first emperor. However, he didn't dare to attack here. The dangers of the sub-tomb was something that he, who came from the future, was really clear about. The slightest movement would activate the restriction, and the four of them would definitely die without a burial ground. His eyes changed for a moment. Zhong Shou didn't hesitate to turn around and leave. In just a few minutes, he returned to the entrance of the cave. When the four of them all rose into the air and left from the dome, Zhong Yuan and Ruoshui, they were shocked to find that the hole they dug had shrunk by a size. Even the spiritual formation that was broken was slowly recovering. Zhong Shou didn't bother at all. After flying out of the 20,000 feet deep hole, just like that, ocean amounts of mined stones were scattered all about. It didn't seem to have any pattern, but an hour later, a spiritual formation that didn't care about cost appeared on the sand dune. He waved his sleeves and ordered Hanshi to fly out from his sleeve. However, when Zhong Shou tied a small heaven and earth bag to its body and sent a spiritual sense over, it didn't move at all, only to see the ant queen forcefully resist the soul pressure and spiritual contract, forcefully stopping its body on the spot. Zhong Shou was slightly startled and then smiled. If you can get that thing over, the 12 leaves of the dry golden-purple lotus are yours, along with 3 more lotus seeds. Only then did Hanshi's eyes light up. It turned into a white light and charged into the hole. A short moment later, just as Zhong Shou was working hard to perfect the spiritual formation, the entire desert suddenly shook like the sky was flipping and the earth was flipping. Then, Hanshi turned into a white light and charged out of the hole. Behind it was a black shadow who was in a bad state, its body broken and broken. Behind the two of them were dozens of green and blue short dagger axes. In just a moment, these dagger axes clashed with the spiritual formation that Zhong Shou had laid out. Instantly, the mountains shook and the earth shook, sand and dust flew up. When all of the flying sand had landed, Lin Fan's eyes lit up. The green and blue short dagger axes were nowhere to be seen. Hanshi had long flown to a safe spot. As for the black Qilin soul beast, its body was broken and broken, unable to even maintain its form. Zhong Shou just used a few spiritual spells to trap it, slowly keeping it into a grade 7 pure soul stone. His eyes were filled with a smile. Out of the 5 spirits, the rarest Qilin bloodline was already in his hands. As for this black Qilin soul beast, it could be strengthened even further. Now, all that was left was the green dragon spirit. Chapter 448. Songqingdao Palace. It was still the first courtyard of the A class of the Learning Palace. Chu Shui was hugging the stone Qilin in her arms, looking worriedly at the spiritual formation drawn in the courtyard. Not only was it like that on the ground, but the stone Qilin baby in her hands was also covered in runes. It innocently opened its eyes, looking at this weird male living being as well as its master playing with it. From the center of Guangling Han Ocean to Songqingdao Palace, they used roughly 10 days. The moment they returned, Zhong Shou started to prepare to merge the remnant soul of the black Qilin beast into the soul of the stone Qilin baby. However, Chu Shui felt that it wasn't reliable, looking suspiciously at Zhong Shou. "Young master, I asked Sister Yanran and Sister Yunlan. They all said that in this world, there definitely isn't a protector beast soul merging and also raising bloodline grade. Even if others take over, they would wipe out the soul of the original body." "Young master, you can't lie to Shui." Zhong Shou couldn't help but roll his eyes. If the soul couldn't merge, then what was going on with him? In his heart, he was a little nervous. This technique was created by people in the future. It wasn't a complete soul merging, but the battle memories of the black Qilin beast as well as a portion of its abilities were injected into the consciousness of the stone Qilin baby. Using its soul power as a guide, it would activate the Qilin bloodline legacy of the stone Qilin baby to raise its grade. However, this was the first time Zhong Shou used it. In the last life, he had just roughly memorized this secret technique. As for whether or not he missed anything, he didn't know. His face didn't reveal anything, calm and confident as he said in disdain, "Don't worry. When have you seen your prince do something he isn't confident in? Yanran and Yunlan? Their spiritual cultivation is indeed not bad. However, they are just frogs at the bottom of the well, not knowing the vastness of heaven and earth and the wonders of the world." A small return to Sun Realm Spirit Master dares to say that there isn't a soul-merging technique in this world. Shameless boasting, they don't know what they are talking about. How would the two of them know the profoundness of this technique? This was created by your ruler, it can be said to be the creation of heaven and earth. He actually didn't feel ashamed at all, taking the credit of the later generations and bragging about himself. At this moment, Zhao Yinran and Xian Yunlan were observing from the side. Hearing those words, the latter was still fine, but he was even more curious. Could Zhong Shou really do it? The former felt as if his lungs were about to explode from anger. She thought to herself, "They are all at the Return to Sun stage, aren't you the same?" He had never heard of a rank 6 soul master being able to create a brand new secret technique. It was most likely just a bluff. Chu Shui, on the other hand, was starting to believe him. His eyes were half convinced and half doubtful, but his eyes were filled with reverence after being duped. He thought to himself, "Young master is such a powerful person, he shouldn't be lying, right? Zhao Yinran and Xian Yunlan are indeed very powerful. However, her Jun Shang was a person who was 100 times more powerful. He shouldn't be lying to her." He hesitated for a moment. In the end, Chu Shui placed the stone Qilin baby in her arms in the center of the spiritual formation, carefully consoling it such that the uneasiness of the baby beast dissipated. Then, she said hesitantly towards Zhong Shou, "Young master, you can't harm the stone. If not, Chu Shui will." She said a few words, unable to finish her sentence. She wanted to say that she wouldn't bother about the young master in the future, which didn't seem to fit her role as a maidservant. She wanted to be endless with Zhong Shou, but she didn't know how to be endless. In the end, Chu Shui gritted her teeth, "Shui will bite you." The people around all burst out laughing. Zhong Yuan couldn't help but laugh, the corner of his lips twitching. Zhong Shou was startled, feeling the killing intent in Shui's words. He thought to himself, "This brat actually cares so much about these few spiritual beasts." He couldn't help but feel guilty, thinking to himself, "Should I perfect it a little more?" However, at this moment, he couldn't back down. He could only learn from the Grandmaster and wave his hand. "Nonsense. It will only be good for it, how would it harm it?" He grabbed 10 grade 6 soul crystals in his hand and crushed them all. When Zhong Shou chanted, the temporary formation below instantly gave out a light green glow, soul power spreading out. The stone Qilin baby in the center of the formation was also tightly bound by an invisible power. Zhong Shou's heart jumped. Why was it green? Based on the description in the book, when this formation was activated, it should gather red, blue, and black spiritual light. Looking around and seeing that there was nothing wrong, Zhong Shou didn't care anymore, taking out the soul crystal that the black Qilin beast turned into. Like it knew its fate, this spirit beast was crazily struggling. However, it was forcefully suppressed by Zhong Shou such that it couldn't move. Moments later, when Zhong Shou sent out tens of complicated hand seals, the soul crystal suddenly exploded. A ball of mist turned into hundreds and thousands of balls spread out within the formation. This item also had threads of pure spiritual energy, which was injected into the stone Qilin baby's brow. Zhong Shou looked around once more, his spiritual sense sweeping out to identify the black mist that was separated from him. These were all the memories of the black Qilin beast. What Zhong Shou needed to do was to identify them one by one. Then, he would guide the useful ones into the mind of the stone Qilin baby. At this moment, the few people who were watching nearby were all shocked. Apart from Zhong Yuan, the other three all had high attainments in spiritual cultivation. At this moment, their eyes were filled with shock. Before this, they didn't believe it, but now that Zhong Shou was doing it step by step, they all understood the rough theory behind this soul merger secret technique. Their hearts jumped. If it succeeded, didn't it mean that the growth of this protector beast wouldn't be any weaker than those spirit beasts that could rely on consuming soul crystals to advance? Chu Shui clenched her fists tightly, looking nervously at the center of the formation. Only to see that the stone Qilin baby had its eyes tightly closed, its expression pained. Occasionally, it would give out a painful cry. If she wasn't worried about disturbing the spiritual formation, it would have the opposite effect. There were several times when she couldn't take it anymore and wanted to charge in to carry this stone out. A moment later, a torrential spiritual pressure suddenly rose up and pressed down on the entire courtyard. The stone Qilin baby in the center of the formation suddenly stood up, its body giving off a yellow glow. Its claws and teeth started to change, stretching out and looking extremely sharp. From time to time, scales could be seen protruding out of his skin. Under its 4 hooves, yellow flames rose up, its expression looking extremely majestic. Grade 7. Yanran and Yunlan were both shocked, exchanging glances with one another. Not only was it grade 7, but what accompanied that suppression was the aura of a god beast. This stone Qilin baby had awakened the ancient Qilin bloodline, its body was swiftly changing. Samuraim's eyes were filled with joy. Out of the 5 spirits, the Qilin was in the center. Within the 5 elements, the earth element was often seen as the source of the other metal, wood, water and fire elements. The earth supported all living things. The most important part of the 5-spirit god-beast secret technique was the Qilin in the center. Power depended on whether or not this stone Qilin could take up a portion of the soul power of the other 4 beasts, as well as provide enough spiritual energy. This was why Zhong Shou was so surprised to be able to see that black Qilin beast in the tomb. Even if he had to take the risk, he had to capture it. A moment later, the floating black mist was reduced by tens of portions. Zhong Shou didn't look anymore, chanting a spell to scatter it. However, just as he stopped the spiritual formation beneath his feet to disperse the spiritual energy and soul power gathered here, he was startled. He saw that the aura of the stone Qilin baby was swiftly shrinking. It wasn't as majestic as before. Its scales, claws, and teeth were all returning to their original shape. Why did its grade drop once more? In a short moment, the stone Qilin baby returned to grade 7. The god-beast specialties were also disappearing. Zhong Shou didn't know what was going on. Why did it drop back when it was fine? Could it be that something had really gone wrong? The only thing that caused him to feel fortunate was that he was still able to sense that this infant stone Qilin beast at this moment was slightly different when compared to before, and it had an additional aura of danger. Apart from that, Zhong Shou also felt that there was something wrong with this little fellow. Its wet eyes were still so innocent and pitiful. Its muscles seemed to have become tighter, making it look more muscular and strong. Zhong Shou suddenly came to his senses. This stone Qilin baby was originally gray in beast skin, but now it had turned pure black and swarthy. Glancing to his side, as expected, he saw Chu Shui staring over angrily. Zhong Shou instantly laughed out loud, raising his head and looking at the sky. It's not early anymore, it's time to start cultivating. Just as he was about to walk swiftly back to his room, he instantly felt a fragrant wind pounce over. Zhong Shoxin knew that it wasn't good and hurriedly dodged. However, his body changed several times, but he was still unable to dodge. Then, his right hand was grabbed and he felt a sharp pain. Looking closely, it was Shui who had viciously bitten his hand. "Shui, you aren't a cat. You really bit me." The moment he said that, he remembered that Chu Shui did indeed have the bloodline of an ocelot. However, Zhong Shou's eyes were filled with deep shock. In terms of movement techniques, although they weren't as good as the sword path, after changing to the dual meridian body, they had become weirder and more nimble, which normal people couldn't compare to. The ice and fire true chi in his body clashed with one another, and usually he didn't need to borrow strength. Along with himself, he had tens of thousands of intense battles in the game, so he had a lot of experience. Even if one's movement technique was several times better than his, it would still be tough to catch him. However, just now Chu Shui not only did she do it, she even used her martial ancestor's strength to totally suppress him, a Xuanwu ancestor. The joy in Zhong Shou's eyes couldn't help but grow thicker. Chu Shui's intuition had advanced. This was an unexpected surprise. It also meant that Chu Shui's combat martial body had improved. Following which, Zhong Shou was woken up by an intense pain. Chu Shui seemed to hate him to the bone, biting down and not letting go. Zhong Shou tried to shake her off several times but was unable to. Just as he was about to open his mouth and threaten, Chu Shui, if you don't let go, I'm going to touch your chest. Suddenly, a bell rang out, deafening the ears. Following which, it couldn't be stopped, 6 consecutive rings shaking the entire Tsangxingdao Palace. To be continued. Chapter 449. Although the sound of the bell stopped, it still reverberated around the palace. Zhong Shou's expression was slightly solemn as he looked towards Zhao Yanran and Xian Yunlan, only to see that the two of them had serious expressions on their faces. Even Chu Shui released Zhong Shou's hand and looked towards the direction of the bell. Zhong Shou thought about it for a moment before his brows furrowed. He directly drove his sword and flew towards the east gate of the palace. The rest of the people followed closely behind. The tens of miles of distance was covered in just a few breaths. At this moment, the tens of thousands of disciples in the palace all rushed over from all directions. They all seemed to know something as they silently lined up on both sides of the palace gate. The current Zhong Shou, be it in the common people's vast habitat or the 3 sects and 6 schools, was already famous. He was the true top disciple of the palace and was also one of the rare third-generation core disciples. Everyone who recognized him all stopped and bowed towards him when they passed by. After reaching the palace gate, no one dared to get close. They all stood far away, leaving an empty space for Zhong Shou. This made it easy for Zhong Yuan and Zhao Yanran, as they didn't need to squeeze together with the other disciples. After waiting for a short while, he heard another bell ring and the door to the Dao Palace suddenly opened. He saw over 100 people standing outside with blank expressions on their faces. They were all around 30 to 40 years old. Their faces were either tired or expressionless. Only a few of them didn't speak, but their eyes were filled with sharpness. The person at the front was really outstanding. Although he was wearing a simple robe and his face was thin, his calm and magnanimous aura made Zhong Shou think about Wei Su right away. Just at this moment, he heard a bell-like male voice ring out at the entrance of the palace. I congratulate all of you on returning to Tsangxingdao Palace. Zhong Shou glanced over, only to see that the person who spoke was a 30-year-old middle-aged man. He wore a Confucian robe, looking young but had a head full of white hair. His current expression was filled with indescribable emotions. He recognized this person. It was Fangwen, the current palace head of the common people's palace. If one were to talk about Tanxio's identity, this person could be considered his senior brother. At this moment, the tens of thousands of disciples all had solemn expressions as they bowed towards the entrance. We welcome all of you back to our Tsangxingdao. Those hundreds of middle-aged disciples were startled. Even those who were completely numb and lifeless raised their head. Their eyes shone brightly. Only the person at the front didn't notice, his body trembling as he walked through the door. When he passed by Fangwen, the latter couldn't help but frown. Junior brother, that middle-aged man didn't bother at all. After walking through the door, he silently raised his head and looked into the sky. His eyes were looking in the direction of the ancestral hall. At this moment, the atmosphere near the palace was filled with shock and excitement. Although everyone was silent, it was obvious that they were suppressing their emotions. He was like a dormant volcano, pressing the lava into his chest and abdomen. Zhong Shou didn't feel anything, carefully looking at that middle-aged man who had a special aura, similar to Wei Su. He thought to himself that this person was definitely that Xueshi. Even Han Feng paid a lot of attention to him. In the next instant, Xueshi suddenly burst into tears and knelt down in front of the ancestral hall. He actually kowtowed meticulously. The hundreds of disciples behind him couldn't help but tear up, following behind Xueshi and kowtowing 3 times and 9 times. Among the crowd, there were several 100+ people that also knelt down. However, they were bowing deeply to the 100+ people on the path. Zhong Shou found it weird, following which he heard Zhao Yanran explain, "These people participated in the Yen City Pass battle before, but they were lucky enough to escape. It was said that these people who were captured didn't care about their lives and went all out to cover the back. After hearing that they were going to return to the sect, they all rushed back." Hearing those few words, Zhong Shou was totally speechless. Zhong Yuan at the side was slightly distracted as he looked at the tomb, muttering, "Now I finally know why the Tsang Xingdao 3 sects and 6 schools can go up against both the righteous and demon paths and not be defeated for 10,000 years. Although Ruoshui didn't speak, her expression was really solemn. After Xueshi completed this huge bow, he stood up. His gaze swept the crowd. Only when it swept past Zhong Shou did he stop, lightly nodding his head as a bow. His eyes were filled with gratitude, but he didn't come over to speak. Zhong Shou smiled, knowing what he meant. This meant that he didn't need words to thank him for his kindness. The friendship between gentlemen was as light as water, there was no need to show it on one's face. Xueshi then shifted his gaze and looked into the sky once more. His eyes were filled with joy and excitement, but also guilt as he bowed once more. Zhong Shou followed his gaze and looked over, only to see that 2 more people had appeared in the sky. One of them was Han Feng, the other was a black-robed Taoist. His old face was filled with sadness and joy. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, thinking to himself that this person was Xueshi's master? To be able to stand side by side with Han Feng, he was probably someone from the 2nd generation of Tsang Xingdao. At this moment, Zhong Shou didn't know that just as he was sizing up the 2 people above, Han Feng and the black-robed Taoist were also discussing him. This person is the disciple that Wei Su accepted on behalf of Senior Master Xian Shuang. You are my youngest junior brother right now? I have seen his sword technique images, grade 6 realm, to actually be able to create his own sword technique. Let's not talk about talent, but his comprehension ability is top within our sect. This time I should be grateful to him. That's right. Han Feng smiled as he looked below at the teen who was squinting his eyes, following which he nodded his head in agreement. I know that senior brother Wei Tian has always seen Xueshi as your own son. This time for Xueshi to be able to break free, you should be grateful to him. The black-robed Taoist coldly glanced at Han Feng, knowing that this person was still blaming him for leaving the sect and not returning for 20 years. Although Han Feng had a calm temperament among his fellow disciples, he was also the one with the least tolerance. Just as he was about to mock him, it turned into a sigh. It isn't that I hate the sect, but every time I come to Tsang Xingdao Palace, I can't help but think about him. I can't let go of this knot in my heart. Junior brother Zhong Shou's kindness is something I will naturally repay. The way junior brother Wei Su does things is so unreliable. Only this time to accept this kid into the sect was really wise. Han Feng felt a little ashamed, laughing out loud. Why are you saying all this for? However, today this junior nephew Xueshi really surprised me. 20 years of imprisonment and torture didn't cause him to sink. Looking at his soul, it is perfect and filled with spiritual light. His current heart and potential is actually several times better than Fongwen's. These 20 years of setbacks are probably a good thing for him instead. Wei Tian smiled and didn't agree or disagree. In the next instance, the entrance of the palace was dead silent. Only to see that Xueshi had casually borrowed a long sword from the waist of a nearby Tsang Xingdao disciple, following which he didn't hesitate to slice open his own wrist. Today Xueshi wants to imitate the Buddhist sect venerables and make 3 O's. First, I am willing to use my entire life. Let my Tsang Xingdao prosper forever and fulfill the wishes of the ancestor. Second, I want everyone who participated in the Yen City Pass incident to pay with their blood. As he said that, the 10,000 disciples nearby all exchanged glances with one another, their eyes filled with shock. Xueshi's voice also paused and he took in a deep breath. Third, Xueshi wants to personally crush that tailing shrine within 3,000 years. Let that tailing sect be wiped out. When he said that, the entire Tsang Xingdao Palace was covered in wind and lightning, dark clouds spreading. Waves of black aura surged from all directions and charged towards Xueshi. Around Xueshi's body, a golden glow appeared and repelled the black energy. It caused it to bare its fangs and claws to be unable to get close at all. His expression was even more solemn and filled with determination. Fellow sect members, please be my witness. If I go against this oath, in the future my soul will be burned up and I will die. When he finished speaking, an aura suddenly burst out from Xueshi's body. It rose all the way up and charged into the sky. In the end, it spread all about, vast soul power crushing all around. Pretty much everyone below grade 6 couldn't take it and knelt on the ground. There were less than 1,500 people who could stand. Their faces were covered in cold sweat and filled with shock. This is grade 9? Zhong Shou's heart was also filled with shock. Before this, when Xueshi stepped into the Common People Palace, he was obviously only grade 7. However, in that instance, he had climbed 2 grades. This phenomenon should be the sign of the oath sealing heaven and earth. Zhao Yanran was startled as she looked on, not knowing what to do. Zhong Yuan was also speechless. This situation was the same as when Zhong Shou made a blood oath to be his servant. However, this aura was tens of times greater. Xian Yunlan's brows furrowed as she looked at the black energy. This is formed by the formless god-demon, the evil thoughts of the people in the world. Although this great senior master Xueshi copied the Buddhist techniques, he didn't use the essence of it. Although he is borrowing the power of the heart demon to raise his cultivation potential. However, if he can't do it within 3,000 years, he will definitely die. He would definitely perish, his entire body burning with flames, becoming the nourishment of these devils. Zhong Shou was still startled, not knowing what to say. However, he could hear the decisiveness and bone-deep hatred in Xueshi's words. With such a huge heaven and earth anomaly, he had probably saved an incredible person this time. In his heart, he couldn't help but pray for the Han King. His Highness had better pray for himself. Out of the people who participated in the Yen City Pass incident, this Han King was an extremely important person. The hundreds of returning disciples behind Xueshi were also startled. However, when they came back to their senses, they all sliced open their wrists. I am willing to follow the oath. I want to rise up Tsang Xingdao. I want to take revenge for my senior brothers. I want to wipe out that tailing sect. Thunder rumbled in the air. Feng Tian sighed, idiot, idiot. Chapter 450. Amidst the rumbling of thunder, Zhong Shou hurriedly returned to his first courtyard A. His expression was still a little weird. When the 134 people swore their oaths, he was shocked. A total of 9 people broke through to grade 7 on the spot. The other 100 people all had some breakthroughs and stepped into the threshold of grade 7. Originally, most of them were people whose hearts were dead, but at that moment they were filled with fighting spirit. When the aura of the 100 people gathered together, the vital energy glow was so vast that even the formless god-demon retreated far away, shocking one's heart. Ruler! That senior brother Shui is indeed a great person. The one who spoke was Zhong Yuan. At this moment, his eyes were filled with shock and respect. Zhong Shou also acknowledged, not knowing whether to agree or disagree. Originally, when he saw those captured disciples released by Tailing Sect, his first thought was that most of these people had already been completely crippled. 20 years of imprisonment and torture had already bent their spines. Even if their cultivation was still there, they wouldn't be able to rise up. However, today, with just a few words and actions, Xueshi caused these people to have something to rely on, something to support them. They regained their energy and weren't as dispirited as before. Xueshi's 3 O's weren't just for his own deep hatred. No wonder Hanfang would pay so much attention to him. Within this Zhang Xingdao there were many talents. Who knows, in the future, this Tailing Sect might really be destroyed in his hands. He was also looking forward to it. Xueshi's return was because of him. Based on the butterfly effect of the future, the wind that he, the butterfly, blew out was getting bigger and bigger. Not only did Gantian Mountain not fall into chaos, but it rose up instead. Zhang Xingdao also didn't fail at Yen City Pass, dealing with Yuan Jiuchen a few years in advance. Today, there was one more Xueshi who swore to wipe out Tailing Sect. Who knows what the future would be like? Zhong Shou himself didn't feel nervous and didn't feel guilty at all. If the future history was chaotic, then so be it. What was there to worry about? A completely different era of Shun Huang was exactly what he wanted. He was afraid that the world of cultivation would not be in chaos. Squinting his eyes, he looked at the fake blue sky above, only to see that the lightning was slowly dissipating and the gathering dark clouds were nowhere to be seen. Zhong Shou suddenly broke into laughter. He had come to this era and lived in this world as Zhong Shou. He was destined to struggle and fight against his own fate. Along the way, at least he didn't end up like in his last life, where he was beheaded in public, with no one to collect his corpse. However, he seemed to be carrying more and more things. Iran, Chu Shui, Ruoshui, Zhong Yuan. He couldn't ignore these people. He couldn't let go of Gantian Mountain City. After joining Zhang Xingdao, he couldn't just stand by and do nothing about the rise and fall of the sect. His body felt heavier and heavier, as if a cocoon was about to wrap him up tightly. For a swordsman, it was hard to say whether this was a blessing or a curse. He was slowly losing focus and his thoughts were in a mess. Zhong Shou suddenly heard a soft scoff by his ear. "You are so young, why are you thinking about all this nonsense? Cultivators like us, unless we break through to the end realm, can we truly control our own fate? A person like you is actually just an ant in front of the Grand Tao. You don't need to purposely let go of anything and don't need to purposely carry those things that you shouldn't. Just do your best and follow your heart. Wherever you go, that's where you are." Zhong Shou came back to his senses and looked towards the sky in shock. He saw that the old man who was standing shoulder to shoulder with Hanfang was standing proudly in the air, looking down with cold disdain. However, his tone was filled with mocking intent. However, his gaze was extremely cold. "You are awake? It is good that you are awake. You're just a small fish struggling to jump out of the river. You don't know how small you are in the eyes of the people on the shore, how amusing you are. Do you know about the Xianjing? When you are born, you are just 3 fingers long, diving deep into the river, obediently growing strong and going with the flow. However, 1,000 years later, you can be 1,000 feet long, able to cause waves and swallow mountains and rivers. You can also roam the void and be invincible. For someone like you, without sufficient strength, even if you can jump out of the river, you will still be picked up and eaten by others." Zhong Shoxin's heart jumped. This old man seemed to be even stronger than Hanfang, able to read his thoughts. He quickly retracted his spiritual sense, causing his mind and soul to sink back down. In the next instant, the old man casually tossed a crystal to Zhang Xian. "Take this item. I, Wei Tiansu, don't like to owe people favors. I thank you for Shi'er's matter." After throwing it down, the old man was about to leave. Before he left, he stopped and smiled. "You are an interesting kid. If you really want to jump out, then learn the path of the Xianjing and stabilize your foundations first." Zhong Shou's lips curled up as he bowed respectfully. "Thank you, senior brother, for your guidance." However, junior brother also heard that the Xianjing in the ocean swallows millions of food each day. When Wei Tian heard that, he laughed out loud. "Cultivators like us should be like that. Fighting for spiritual medicine, fighting for treasures, fighting for luck, fighting for the path. The big fish swallowing the small fish, it is the same. That is all I have to say today. Junior brother, take care of yourself." When Wei Tian said that, he was long gone. Zhong Shou was grateful. Wei Tian's words solved the knot in his heart and removed the stone in his chest. In the next instance, from the corner of his eyes, he saw Chu Shui hugging the black stone Qilin baby, staring at him with a wronged expression. Zhong Shoxin's heart jumped, his body flashing. "I am going into secluded meditation today. Don't disturb me if you have nothing to do." Without waiting for Chu Shui to react, he rushed into the room like a gust of wind and slammed the door shut with a ping sound. Just as he sat down, Zhong Shou saw that outside the window, Chu Shui was already standing there, pouting her mouth, her watery eyes opened wide as she stared inside. Zhong Shou felt more and more guilty, acting like he didn't see anything as he took out the crystal that Wei Tian had thrown to him. It was the size of a thumb, threads of blue spiritual light spread all about. "It is a legacy crystal?" Zhong Shou was shocked, trying to place the blue crystal at the center of his forehead. After a long while, Zhong Shou moved the stone away, his eyes filled with shock. Inside was all of Wei Tian's experience and comprehension of the spiritual cultivation path. It was a complete set of Spirit Master legacy. After joining Tsang Xingdao, he didn't lack Spirit Master books and book. If he didn't understand anything, he could find someone to help him. However, it was far from being like this legacy crystal, where all the talismans were drawn, the key points of spiritual cultivation battles, and comprehension of the path of heaven and earth were all present. It also had all of the process of Wei Tian forming his Dharma when he was at the God realm. "This item is like charcoal in the snow, I have really earned it." Exclaiming, Zhong Shou kept it. Following which, he took out a jade pendant, the one he had gotten from the Han King. Her Highness didn't have much knowledge, but Zhong Shou had seen this item in the vast books in the library. Smashing it with a palm, as expected at the core of the jade pendant, a few drops of jade liquid flew out. Zhong Shou used true qi to retract it, following which joy flashed in his eyes. As expected, it was this item, jade core spiritual milk. In the next instance, 3 more golden pills appeared in Zhong Shou's hand. It was one of the 24 seeds of the Godlight purple gold lotus. Unfortunately, Iran wasn't here. If this pill refining genius was here to refine these 2 spiritual items into pills, the effects would be multiplied. Speaking of which, he didn't know whether the jade core spiritual milk and Godlight purple gold lotus were compatible or not. However, Zhong Shou didn't hesitate to consume them. At this moment, he was valiantly improving, going all out to break through and try to form his Dharma. He didn't have so much time to waste and wait. The moment the 2 spiritual items entered, Zhong Shou felt a sharp pain in his stomach, which spread to his entire body. The metal spiritual energy that the Godlight purple gold lotus dissolved directly seeped into his muscles and bones. On one hand, it mercilessly destroyed all his flesh and blood, all his bones and tendons. On the other hand, it urged his body to recover. The time that the jade core spiritual milk took to dissolve was a little slower. However, when it spread out, it suppressed the pain and continued to strengthen the body that had been destroyed hundreds of times by the metal's spiritual energy. Although the effects weren't obvious, it was more gentle and all-rounded, strengthening little by little. Zhong Shoksan said, as expected. His expression relaxed as he went all out to guide the medicinal power to his limbs and bones. This time, it could be said to be the most effortless one among all his experiences in consuming spirit items. The sun set and the moon set. Zhong Shou didn't open his eyes until he felt that there were no more changes in his body. Looking at the color of the sky outside, he knew that it was the morning of the 7th day. He looked at his hands, only to see that apart from the original jade white, there was an additional thread of gold on the surface of his skin. The 3 Godlight purple gold lotus seeds left a few strands of extremely pure Gung Jin spirit energy in his body and bones. As for the jade core spiritual milk, not only did it strengthen his body, it also healed all the hidden injuries. Even his broken soul was healed by a large amount. Zhong Shou smiled, knowing that his current physical body wasn't much different from a grade 7 spiritual weapon. His physical body had already stabilized, his soul was also recovering. What was next was to charge for the Earth grade 9th layer of the world's shocking spiritual art and prepare to form the Dharma. Just as Zhong Shou was about to take out the blazing glass pearl, an extreme dark chill energy pearl, the dragon-shaped totem on his arm suddenly felt a burst of heat. Zhong Shou was instantly delighted, his body flashing like a swift shadow. In just 100 breaths, he was outside of Tsang Xingdao Palace. He rode on the lightning-winged flood serpent and flew for 6 hours before rushing to the world abyss. Just as he arrived, he saw a green-shirt teen waiting with his hands behind his back. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed, slightly confused. "You are Ao Kuan?" The name Ao Kuan was the name of the evil dragon that old man Long Ing told him about. "That's right." That teen smiled as he turned around, holding something in his hand. Samuraim's gaze froze. In Ao Kuan's hand was a baby green serpent beast. Chapter 451. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, a year and a half had passed. Outside of Gantian Mountain City, on the wide path, a group of cavalry were galloping swiftly. Not long after, a huge city appeared in front of the group of knights. "Governor Commander, we have arrived at Gantian Mountain City." There were a total of 40 cavalry, all muscular men riding on the strongest windrider foals. They wore spiritual armor crafted by artifact blacksmith. Only the one at the front was extremely beautiful, her body was petite. She was also wearing a refined silver armor that was suitable for women. Her eyes were always closed, but when she opened them, her watery eyes seemed to contain the Milky Way. Vivid, deep and bright. She was deep in thought as she looked at the path beneath her. From Rainbow City to Gantian Mountain City, 740 miles of green wind stone path. Within my great Shang dynasty there are only 50 or so. The green wind stone had the ability to gather wind, using stone to pave the path. It could allow the cloud-stepping foals to save energy and increase their galloping speed by 3 times. This was built in recent years. That Gantian Mountain Monster King invested close to 1 million grade 4 beast crystals to build this path. There are a total of 7 paths that pass through his territory, most of which are still unfinished. I heard that anyone who uses this path has to pay to make up for the losses of the Monster King. The merchants around hate it to the bone but are also happy to see it. The person who spoke was beside the teen. He had an eagle nose and a green face, wearing the uniform of a governor. At this moment, his face was filled with disdain as he shook his head. Building the green wind stone path is a good thing. However, the current situation in Donglin Cloud Continent is that the war hasn't stopped. They don't prepare for war and instead use money on such things. What a joke. If Gantian Mountain City is wiped out, it will most probably be used by others. The Taishang Country military system, 10,000 people town, ruled by a commander. 30,000 to 100,000 people formed an army, and there was a governor. Above that would be a governor-commander, who could rule 3 to 500,000 people. The girl who was called governor-commander didn't agree or disagree, following which she looked at the giant city in the distance, the shock in her eyes growing thicker. Who knew that Donglin Cloud Continent, such a barbaric land, would have such a majestic city? Just by looking at it from the outside, one could tell that this city was full of life and had a large population. That green-masked domain chief laughed in disdain when he heard this. It's only comparable to a city in Taishang, or even slightly inferior. Governor, do you need someone to go in and inform the Demon King to come out of the city to receive the heavenly decree? The girl shook her head slightly. This Gantian mountain city rules 13 provinces of land. Even in my central cloud continent, it is equivalent to a vassal state and cannot be treated lightly. Moreover, whether or not to pass this decree to this person, I still need to look at the situation within Gantian Mountain before making a decision. Before she finished speaking, the woman had already covered her face with a silver mask and headed straight for the city gate. The guards at the city gate looked undisciplined, but they were actually lax on the outside and restricted on the inside. However, no matter if it was Donglin Cloud Continent or Central Cloud Continent, everyone loved martial arts, which was why they didn't confiscate their armors and weapons. After asking Lai Li about their cultivation, he registered their cultivation and allowed them to pass. Maybe seeing that their background wasn't normal, right after the group of cavalry entered the city, a red messenger bird flew towards the peak of Gantian Mountain. That silver-armored teen saw this but didn't care. He looked around on the street, and then his pupils constricted. There are so many martial cultivators in this Gantian mountain. The passers-by along the way were all at the martial master level. Shoulders brushing against each other, the flow was endless. In just a short 1,000 feet of streets, there were close to 100 Xiantian masters. There were also many spirit masters, taking up 10% of them. The shops on both sides mostly bought various beast hides and various spiritual materials. Next was armor and pill business, extremely prosperous. The green-masked commander's expression was also slightly solemn. I asked around before, this is due to a decree from the Demon King 2 years ago. Loaning money to martial cultivators to buy weapons, opening up martial arts books and spirit master books. I heard that there are 40,000 Xiantian masters in this city. This year, there are close to 400,000 mythic masters who followed this Gantian mountain cloud ocean hunt. The silver-armored teen furrowed her brows and continued to walk forwards, following which she felt a little weird. This street was unusually clean. It was even cleaner than the capital of Taishang City. When she reached out with her spiritual sense, she felt that there was actually a hole below. All the dirty water in the city was drained into it. That green-masked commander looked at her expression and laughed. This was done by the Demon King. I heard that this kid is obsessed with cleanliness and doesn't like dirt and mess, which was why he invested 100,000 beast crystals to build this sewer. This city is much cleaner. The teen shook her head. In just a moment, she arrived at an area where rivers were spread all over. The corners of her lips under the silver mask curled up slightly. Although this place was changed into a business street, there was still some lingering smell of fireworks. This was surely Ling Xiangding. She had heard that after the Demon King ascended, his first decree was to close this place. Speaking of which, in Commander Li's eyes, this Demon King is a Demon King. Is this Demon King a preposterous and incapable ruler? Commander Li hesitated slightly before nodding his head without hesitation. He can't be considered an incapable ruler, but the word preposterous is true. This kid is a genius. Unfortunately, he became famous at such a young age and hasn't faced any setbacks. It is unavoidable for him to be arrogant. If it was during a peaceful era, what he did would be beneficial to the country. However, it is a chaotic era. I heard that Yunxia and Blazing Flame Mountains are preparing troops day and night to spy on the west. The Thousand City Alliance formed by Longxiang City is getting bigger and bigger, covering 17 provinces. They are also eyeing Gantian Mountain aggressively. This kid doesn't think about consolidating his troops and instead is reducing them. He is too confident. The silver-armored teen nodded her head in deep thought. After thinking for a moment, she directly walked towards an inn. Such a place where all sorts of people were mixed together was the best place to gather information. The moment she entered, the teen heard a sigh. What he said was exactly the same as what Commander Li said. Sigh. I really don't know what the Demon King is thinking about. Other people are expanding their troops, but this one wants to simplify the army. Gantian Mountain has 13 provinces, 2,700 cities. They originally had 25 million troops, but now they have less than 3 million. If Yunxia and Blazing Flame City attacks, who knows what the ruler will use to block? You can't say that. Since they reduced their troops, didn't they replenish some? The soldiers in the army are at least martial masters, and there are also many spirit masters. Moreover, there are fewer soldiers and the burden is lighter. Today, the people under Gantian Mountain's rule were much more relaxed and they had more manpower to work. The ruler has reduced taxes and those commoners can afford to buy clothes, salt and accessories. If not, how will we earn money? Scoff. That depends on when it is. At this moment, the enemy hasn't been wiped out. Those 300 towns, no matter how elite they are, won't be able to do much. They can use people to stack you to death. I heard that the Thousand City Alliance has 30 million troops. His Highness is a wise ruler, which is why I don't want to see Gantian Mountain fall. His tone was filled with hatred, but it caused the entire building to be silent. Shortly after, a soft laugh rang out. There are even preposterous things. I heard that His Highness has stopped caring about politics. He has passed all the big and small administrative matters to that cabinet to handle. He also gave a lot of power to that so-called meeting hall and was restricted by it, to cause such chaos and mess around. It is indeed a little preposterous. However, His Highness is smart, not letting go of military power. Now he is reducing his private army. What is the use of having military power? Wealth is in the hands of others. Maybe His Highness doesn't have the ambition to unify Donglin Cloud Continent. That is most likely the case. What a waste. If the entire Cloud Continent could be under Gantian Mountain, my business would expand by several times. Why are you saying all this? Speaking of which, isn't today the meeting hall's 3-day meeting? There was going to be a good show to watch now. The two of them were definitely going to have a fierce battle today. Unfortunately, it is hard to get a ticket for the spectator seat. Hee, this old man bought one and spent a total of 300 rank 4 beast crystals. Meeting hall? Curiosity appeared in the eyes of the silver-armored teen. She looked towards Commander Li with a questioning gaze. The latter shook his head slightly. I have never seen it before. I heard that it was created by this monster king. It is similar to the meetings of various tribe leaders in ancient times. All the merchants and nobles in Gantian Mountain would feel proud to watch from the side. Hearing the words, tribe leaders meeting, the silver-armored teen shook her head. She thought to herself that this Gantian Mountain monster king did make one speechless. However, if she had a chance today, she wanted to take a look at this meeting hall. Since this monster king is so preposterous, why did city leader Li suggest to choose Gantian Mountain last month when he was discussing with the emperor, and not that Thousand City Alliance Longxiang Mountain City? Commander Li's expression instantly turned solemn. Commander, I think so. It is because that monster king is preposterous and has no intention to expand that he is the best choice. Yunxia and Blazing Flame have too many powers. Although the Longxiang Mountain City Lord is good at strategy and knows about military matters, he is ambitious. Thousand City Alliance and the Donglin sects are too close. Although they are the strongest in Donglin Cloud Continent, they aren't the best choice. If our Taishang wants to choose a family to support, the most suitable one would be this Gantian mountain city. The silver-armored teen couldn't help but slightly nod her head, her expression fluctuating. Just as she was thinking about it, she heard an exclamation from the side. "Isn't that the ruler? Is he patrolling the city?" The teen was shocked as she walked to the side of the railing. Looking out, she saw a group of cavalry dressed in fresh clothes and riding on strong horses passing on the street. The one at the lead was a teen, looking like a girl, wearing a king robe. Beside him was an old man. Without needing to ask, the silver-armored teen knew that this was Gantian Mountain Prime Minister Rinbo. In the next instance, the teen suddenly felt something. Turning his head, he saw a young man looking out of the building with a playful expression. Chapter 452. During these 2 years, the Prime Minister has run this Gantian mountain well. He didn't rush nor slow as he rode his horse on the street. Just looking at the endless shops on both sides, one could see how prosperous the current Gantian mountain was. It was also filled with people, similar to when he first came to Gantian Mountain. However, Zhong Shou knew that the rent of these shops was 7 times that of before. Gantian Mountain's business tax had risen by 10 times in a short 2 years. Even if they didn't go down to the Cloud Ocean to hunt, they could support the 3 million troop. In the past, beast crystals and mind stones were mostly for their own use. They didn't trade much on the market, but now that there were more and more martial cultivators in the country, beast crystals and mind stones as well as various beast hides and spiritual herbs had increased by several fold. Naturally, the business tax had also risen sharply. "This is the work of the ruler, it has nothing to do with me." Rinbo laughed, his face filled with self-mockery. If not for the few government decrees from the ruler, how would Gantian Mountain have the strength of the country today? You must know that today, just the Xiantian experts who entered our Gantian Mountain city records alone are 80,000. However, a small half of them came for the ruler's 9 books of the true dragon sword technique. That shocked the Cloud Continent. Zhong Shou was delighted, his eyes turning into crescent moons. However, he also knew that if it wasn't for Rinbo helping him deal with those complicated administrative matters, Gantian Mountain wouldn't be so strong. This old fellow was good in every way, except that he was too smart. A year ago, when he wanted to repair the roads, he wanted to charge 200 years. In the end, this old man forcefully reduced it to 50 years, causing his future income to be reduced by 70%. How despicable! However, no matter where I go, I hear people say that I, Zhong Shou, am a preposterous ruler. Scoff! What do those ignorant people know? Rinbo scoffed coldly, filled with disdain. My Gantian Mountain, although we only have 3 million troops, the weakest are martial masters who have cultivated to the 5th chakra meridian. They all cultivate a kind of support heart sutra. Their combat strength is far from what those mobs 2 years ago can compare to. Ruler instructed me to buy those 3 million spiritual armors and weapons in secret. I only need half a year to prepare all of them and can change them at any time. And the Blood Cloud Cavalry. Speaking of these 3 words, Rinbo's expression also changed slightly. If he didn't know that their Gantian Mountain city had actually built up such an elite force without a sound, he would have thought that Zhong Shou was really satisfied and didn't want to expand anymore. Thinking of this, it was not a place where he could speak with ease. Rinbo paused and then asked curiously, "Your Highness, when will you take action?" This was also the question that everyone in Gantian Mountain had. Everyone thought that Gantian Mountain was weak after the disarmament. However, anyone who had some status and was able to enter the core of Gantian Mountain would know how strong the army was. 3 million martial cultivators might not be the opponent of the tens of millions of Thousand City Alliance troop. However, Once they were equipped with the spiritual armors and weapons that were prepared long ago, they could fight 1 against 10. And in the entire Donglin Cloud continent, how many powers would be able to take out such a huge sum? Even the Lingyun sect that had been passed down for 10,000 years might not be willing to do so. In Renbo's eyes, if it wasn't for Zhong Shou suppressing them, with the current strength of Gantian Mountain, they could sweep Yunxia and Blazing Flame City. Kiki, it is best if we act weak. We can take the moral high ground and cut off any excuse for the Donglin sects to interfere. Zhong Shou thought about it carefully and shook his head. He could only sigh. Things in this world were just so weird. A year and a half ago, he was a ruler that everyone praised for being smart and capable. However, a year and a half later, he was linked to being preposterous. Suddenly, he saw a person from the corner of his eyes. Zhong Shou was startled as he looked towards the restaurant at the side, only to see a silver-armored teen wearing an exquisite mask looking over. Why was this woman here? After coming to this era, Zhong Shou had never seen her before. However, 10,000 years later, her name was like thunder in his ears. The only woman who was called a military god in the early stages of the God-Emperor era. Her dressing was no different from what was recorded in the history book. Silver mask, grade 9 silver refined snow pattern armor, she was also the only one. However, wasn't this woman the capital general of the Taishang dynasty? Why was she here? Within the restaurant, there was another person who looked over. Her expression was like she was looking at a monkey, making him feel really uncomfortable. Zhong Shou frowned but didn't care much. That woman was said to be loyal to the Taishang dynasty, and he had no way to rope her in. As for the latter, what was that? On the peak of Gantian Mountain, a bell rang out and spread throughout the city. Zhong Shou retracted his attention and looked towards heaven's suppressing peak. Ruler, the meeting hall has started. Do you want to take a look? Zhong Shou nodded slightly. He was in Songqingdao Palace and only came back once every half a year. Naturally, he had to take a look at the meeting hall. Prime Minister, may I know what we are discussing today? Today we are discussing huge matters. One is to adjust the entrance tax of Xuanqing bamboo arrows. Secondly, Qianxue and Fanghui want to enter our direct rule. Hu Qianxiu and Chai Yuan have been scolding each other since 2 months ago. I heard that they are prepared to fight to the death. Xuanqing bamboo arrow tax. Zhong Shou's brows rose up, filled with questions. He knew that the Xuanqing bamboo was a top material for making spiritual arrows. It could carve wind element spiritual formations and was really strong. It was commonly seen in Donglin Cloud continent, however. There were only a few places where the quality was good. There was also that Qianxue and Fanghui city, which made him feel weird. These city lords didn't want to be overlords. Why did they want to be directly ruled by him? Speaking of which, in this year, the number of cities directly ruled by Gantian Mountain had increased to 40. He didn't even need to send troops. How weird. A quarter of the Xuanqing bamboo arrow-making industry is controlled by the Wind Bear race. As for the overlord Duke Hu Qianxiu, I heard that through trade he bought many Xuanqing wood spiritual arrows and earned a huge sum. Does the ruler understand now? Zhong Shou's face was filled with understanding. Renbo laughed, which is why the two of them are quarreling. A few days ago, Chai Yuan raised a proposal to raise the taxes of the Xuanqing bamboo arrows. If they couldn't earn money from buying from outside, their Wind Bear race industry would naturally be able to be protected. Originally, the vast country Duke Chai Yuan wasn't the overlord Duke's opponent. However, this matter also involved the Pill Crane race, which was why the He family also participated. The two sides joined hands and roped in many discussions. Their strength was even greater than Chai Yuan's. As for Qianxue and Fanghui City, it was for the welfare of the people that the ruler set. Only the people directly ruled by the cities have the right to enjoy it. Along with the merchants paying taxes as one, a small half of the 13 provinces want to be directly ruled by Gantian Mountain to gain some benefit. It is so annoying. Zhong Shou replied with an "oh" to express that he understood. Thinking back to half a year ago, what happened in the meeting hall, he decided to make some preparations before heading over. He turned around and looked at Chu Shui. "Shui, go buy some good food back." Chu Shui giggled when she heard that, patting her small heaven and earth bag. "I prepared it long ago, it is what the young master likes." Zhong Shou's eyes were filled with praise. It was still Chu Shui who understood his thoughts. He urged the horse to speed up, galloping at full speed on the street. Just before the third bell rang, he rushed back to Jing'an Peak. The meeting hall here had expanded by 3 times and was made of Taigang stone. The energy was also thicker and thicker, suppressing true qi and soul power even more. Usually, the meeting hall meetings were hosted by Hu Qianqiu and Chai Yuan. However, at this moment, since Zhong Shou had returned, naturally he was the leader, solemnly sitting at the top. Below them were a total of 500 counselors. Just before it started, Zhong Shou swept the spectator seat. There were more people, close to 1,000. A smile appeared in Zhong Shou's eyes. These seats were all beast crystals and mind stones. However, a moment later, he was startled. Not only was the teen prince there, but the silver-armored teen was also there. Not mentioning the latter, he knew about her background. The identity of the former was also really special. What did the two of them come here for? He didn't think much about it, taking a hammer and smashing it down heavily. He signaled that today's meeting had officially begun. Without needing him to speak, there was an official who took the first proposal and started to read it out. Sure enough, it was about increasing the import tax on the Xuanqing bamboo arrows. All of a sudden, the tax on the Xuanqing bamboo arrows had increased by 30%. After reading it out, Hu Qianqiu's face sunk. "Country Duke Chai, what do you mean? You only allow yourself to eat and not allow others to drink soup." Chai Yuan was at the side, his eyes not even blinking. "The problem is that my wind bear race can't even drink soup. Are you really going to fight with our tiger family today? We have no choice." Hu Qianqiu scoffed coldly when he heard that. A sharp expression flashed in his eyes, but he didn't speak. Chai Yuan walked to the front of the stage. His expression was one of sadness, his hands wiping his eyes as tears flowed down. "Today I, Chai Yuan, am here to complain to all of you. A set of Xuanqing bamboo arrow materials is worth 3 grade 3 beast crystals. It takes half a day to make one, and the materials are often 30% damaged. After selling it, it is only worth 10 grade 3 beast crystals. The profits are small, but my wind bear race, along with our servants, has 120,000 people, relying on this business to survive. However, today we can't even earn this little bit of money." On the side of Zhong Shou, he used his hand to cover his mouth, suppressing the urge to laugh out loud. "Prime Minister, just now the vast country duke used garlic, right? Just now he personally saw that Chai Yuan secretly used garlic to wipe his eyes." Chu Shui, who was beside him, turned her head and laughed out loud. Renbo coughed lightly like he was used to it, his expression expressionless. "Vast country duke's acting has always been good. Within Gantian Mountain City, you are praised by everyone." Chapter 453. Chai Yuan continued. The more he spoke, the sadder he got. "You all might think that my wolf race makes the Xuanqing bamboo arrows to hire people and suck the blood of the workers. But my Chai family has always been kind and generous. Every arrow we make, we only take 3 grade 3 beast crystals, a large portion of which is returned to the workers. If we don't have such a livelihood, where will the hundreds of thousands go to? Actually, with our ability, what business can't we do to earn money? We just can't bear to give it up. This is also thinking for our Gantian Mountain. If we don't have our own spirit blacksmiths and artifact blacksmiths, if we are locked down by the Thousand City Alliance and the arrows aren't sold to us, what should we do?" Before he finished speaking, A buzzing sound came from the meeting room. Many of them nodded slightly, as if they agreed with him. Even those in the spectator stands were cheering. Zhongsho nodded his head as he heard that. Those words made sense. Their Gantian mountain couldn't be choked by others. Chai Yuan spoke for a while more, his face tearing up, his face filled with pain. A full 10 minutes later, he walked down from the platform. Then it was Hu Qianqiu's turn. He had a different style, giving off a valiant aura. A head shorter than Chai Yuan, Hu Qianqiu's 9 feet tall body stood on the platform. There was a heavy pressure that caused the entire meeting hall to be silent. Squinting his eyes and looking at Chai Yuan, Hu Qianqiu laughed coldly. The selling price of 10 grade 3 beast crystals is only today's price. 2 months ago, when the Xuanxing bamboo arrows were monopolized by your wind bear and pill crane races, it was 50 grade 3 beast crystals. The quality was even lower. 2 out of 10 arrows can't be fired. Old man Chai, do you know how many people your Xuanxing bamboo arrows have killed? Chai Yuan's face changed slightly, following which he was like an old monk meditating, not moving at all. Zhongsho was shocked. Weren't the two of you best friends? Why do you look like enemies now? We fell out long ago. As Renbo spoke, his face was filled with admiration. In the past, the Iron Tiger and Wind Bear clans had a good relationship and were as close as brothers. It was also for the sake of joining forces to prevent Jun Shang's Fox tribe from dominating. However, ever since His Highness set up this meeting hall and delegated many important decisions, the various demon tribes and the human race have been fighting fiercely. Instead, it was the royal family that had a transcendent status. However, when the two of them have similar interests, they will be as close as brothers. They are truly cunning beyond compare. Zhongsho was silent for a while. He really did not have such thoughts at that time. On the other side, Hu Qianqiu was still solemnly shouting out, "Our Gantian mountain army has already eliminated these Xuanxing bamboo arrows and changed to the stronger Xian iron heavy arrows. So what if others didn't want to sell it? Using such an inferior arrow would only cause death. If the price was too high, they wouldn't be able to buy enough arrows. It would also reduce the harvest of the domestic martial artists, which would be detrimental to the government. Moreover, our Gantian mountain martial arts is flourishing, and our trade is the best in the world. If those 100,000 people don't do this, they would really die. If we can make them pick up weapons, our Gantian mountain will have 100,000 more martial artists." Below the altar, there was an uproar of cheers. Naturally, there were people who booed. Zhongsho only felt that it was really weird. Hu Qianqiu's words didn't seem to be wrong, making one confused. However, he could also see that the fox race and the human race were just looking on calmly from the side. Those who were cheering or tearing down the stage were all people who had benefit. As Hu Qianqiu spoke, he waved his hands around, showing that he was using a lot of strength. In the end, he seemed to feel that it wasn't strong enough, ripping off his shirt, revealing his firm muscles. His eyes were cold as he swept everyone. Anyways, today this proposal cannot pass. Whoever raises their hand, I, Hu Qianqiu, will fight with him to the end. Chai Yuan was so furious that he trembled. The entire meeting hall was deathly silent. Zhongsho was startled when he heard that. Is that a threat? Didn't I say that it wasn't allowed? It can't be considered. Renbo shook his head. There are many ways to say this fight to the end. As long as the Overlord Duke's methods are limited to this meeting, it isn't against the rules. Actually, he doesn't need to openly kill and set fires. There are many methods he can use in the dark, like creating rumors and blocking people from the market. Seeing that everyone was shocked by him, Hu Qianqiu was secretly delighted. Then, he turned around and bowed towards the seat above. Zhongsho's eyes opened wide, only to see a few black things suddenly fly up from the seats. He couldn't help but open his mouth to remind him, but it was too late. Those few black shadows smashed onto Hu Qianqiu's head one after another, exploding and dyeing his body black and red. Hu Qianxiu took a look at his body and immediately turned around in rage. This is the blood of a black dog. Which bastard is it? The entire meeting hall was unusually silent. Everyone's faces were filled with innocent astonishment. No matter how Hu Qianxiu looked, he couldn't find anyone suspicious. In the end, he looked towards the expressionless Chai Yuan and hollered, "It must be you. Last time I only asked people to throw you 2 banana peels, and you took revenge by giving me a bucket of black dog blood. Today in front of the ruler you dare to do that. I'm not done with you." His body was like a shadow as he shouted and pounced over. Chai Yuan's face was filled with shock, an innocent expression that said, "You found the wrong person." When he heard the latter half, he was furious. "Wow, that banana peel was really you. In that case, 4 months ago, the 2 eggs on my head were most likely yours, Hu Qianxiu." Hu Qianxiu scoffed coldly and didn't reply, taking the initiative and directly using a 1,000-mile tiger roar, punching Chai Yuan's face. Chai Yuan was also a vicious person, not dodging or avoiding, a bare palm slapping out, causing Hu Qianxiu to stumble backward. Both of them were martial path ancestors. At this moment their true qi was being suppressed. However, their physical bodies also had hundreds of thousands of kilograms of strength. Going all out, in just an instant, the tens of meeting halls around were all swept up. The people around were all anxious as they looked on. Some people rushed in anxiously, ready to do their best to save their master. Some people tried their best to dissuade them from the side, but from time to time, they would kick them in and give them a push. Take revenge if you have grievances, complain if you have grievances. All of a sudden, the meeting hall was in a mess. Hundreds of people were fighting in a mess, a little like a massacre in the marketplace. Banana peels and eggs flew. Dog blood was the same color as human blood. Zhong Shou took the hammer and knocked on the golden bell at the side. He shouted for silence several times, but it was useless. Seeing numerous items fly over from the front, Zhong Shou quickly dodged to the side, only to see a few apples smashed into pieces on the wall behind him. He thought to himself that it was a close shave. He was nearly hit by a stray bullet. Who knows who was the one who didn't want his life to throw things around. Luckily, he had experience last time and naturally wouldn't be at a loss this time. He decisively hid under the table with Chu Shui and Renbo. Then, he looked forward excitedly. Chu Shui was really well behaved, taking out several pastries and dishes from her heaven and earth bag and placing them in front of the 3 of them. Unfortunately, he couldn't drink alcohol and could only use the 100-flower spiritual wine that Song Xing Dao produced himself as a replacement. Just 1 mouthful of this item would be able to recover a large amount of true qi and spiritual energy. Its taste was no weaker than those yellow grade and even Xian grade celestial brews. Uncle Hu's tiger roar back to the forest is really good. Compared to half a year ago, he has improved greatly. In just a few months, he will be able to step into the ascended realm. Seeing Hu Qianxiu roar out, either hugging his arms or legs, pretending to stop the fight but actually trying to trap him, allowing Chai Yuan to beat up the 10 over people. Zhong Shou's eyes instantly lit up. As expected, actual combat is the best way to train a person. Speaking of which, who was the one who threw the black dog blood out? In front of me, he really is bold. Was it Chai Yuan? He needs to be heavily punished. He only saw that the black dog blood was activated by a few specialized spiritual artifacts like it was preset. As for who controlled it and who brought it in, he didn't know. Although the Taigang Hall suppressed true qi, his soul remembrance and divine sense were also unable to spread out. There were many things that he couldn't understand. That might not be the case. Renbo smiled, his tone filled with deep meaning. It might be Hu Qianxiu's own act. Based on what I know, the Chai and He families working together are a little stronger. They most probably have a chance of passing today. fighting a battle in the meeting hall and then delaying time before finding another way to counterattack. Today, these few people are already really familiar with this move. Actually, not only Hu Qianqiu and Chai Yuan, but the Ling family, He family, the few powers of the human race all have a chance. Only by messing up the water can we fish in troubled waters. As Zhong Shou listened on, he felt dizzy. This was a little too complicated. As expected, he wasn't cut out for politics. He decided not to bother about all this, eating while focusing on the battle. Uncle Chai's palm is really strong, it has a deep understanding of the martial path. His progress is actually not lower than Uncle Hu's. At most 2 days later, he can step into grade 7. Oh no, not good. He is being hit by a stick. How despicable! Only to see Chai Yuan being invincible, sweeping across a piece of land. Suddenly, someone silently snuck up behind him and struck out with a stick. This vast country duke was nearly smashed unconscious. Hu Qianqiu wasn't much better off, his head bleeding and panting. Renbo was startled when he heard that. Who knows how Zhong Shou judged that the two of them could break through to Ascended Ancestor? Although his martial path wasn't deep, he knew that the Ascended Realm was the hardest to determine when one broke through. Apart from accumulating, one still needed to accumulate. Even those grade 9 experts found it hard to judge, so how would Zhong Shou know? In the next instance, he heard Zhong Shou say in pain, "How can this be? How can this be? What a disgrace to the educated." Chai Yuan couldn't help but scold him when he heard that. Every time I come back, you are the one who enjoys watching the show the most. Chapter 454. Chai Yuan couldn't help but curse out when he heard that. Every time he came back, the one who enjoyed watching the show the most was him. Actually, if the ruler really couldn't take it anymore and wanted to stop them, who would dare to be arrogant in front of him? Be it if they acted themselves or called in the troops outside, they could stop this farce. He could see that Zhong Shou was mostly indulging in this meeting hall brawl. Even Chu Shui glanced sideways, looking at her teen with disdain. Zhong Shou didn't notice that he was being looked down on by the two of them. He sighed with a headache. How improper! Aren't you afraid of being laughed at? If you have the strength to fight, why not use it on the battlefield? Uncle Chai's body training cultivation method is really amazing. The two beside him looked over, their brows raised in delight. Only to see Chai Yuan go crazy, smashing the tables and chairs around him into pieces. The person who hit him with the rod also kicked him away. Apart from his eyes being a little dizzy, his body was totally unharmed. At this moment, not only were there those who were in the meeting hall, but there were also people who jumped down to join in the battle. On the other side of the viewing platform, the expressions of the silver-armored girl and the commander surnamed Li were already incomparably strange. Those two people are the Wind Bear and Iron Tiger race leaders of Gantian Mountain? Scoff, can they be considered officials of the court? Openly brawling, how are they different from those country bumpkins? Where is the status of an official? As expected, it is a barbaric land. The silver-armored teen frowned, looking carefully in the direction of the seat above. She also shook her head. This Zhong Shou doesn't look like a ruler. Just as she said that, she heard the same words ring out from the side. This kid doesn't look like a ruler. What rights does he have to rule the 13 provinces of Donglin? Yu Guanyun is useless and made this kid famous. The silver-armored teen's eyes were filled with surprise as she looked to the side, only to see that it was the teen prince she saw in the restaurant. However, the person who spoke just now was a blue-clothed middle-aged man beside this person. That young master shook his head slightly, not agreeing or disagreeing, only saying expressionlessly that Yu Guanyun, Xiongba and Feng Nu do have some ability. The Monster King's actions 2 years ago were indeed wise and valiant. To be able to become Elder Long Ying's disciple, his aptitude must be top-notch. But now, however, he didn't say anything else. The young man's voice paused, and he also glanced in this direction with vigilance. The silver-armored girl smiled and retracted her gaze. She had an ability, and even with spells protecting her, it was often unable to hide from her ears. Although it was wrong to eavesdrop, he had no choice but to get too close. Then, he heard a voice beside him. Commander Lee frowned as he laughed bitterly. "Commander, right now, I'm starting to doubt my own judgment. This kid is so preposterous. Even with our Taishang supporting him, he won't be able to make it. Why don't we head to Longxiang City to take a look? Although the one in the east is a little ambitious, it's better than this Gantian mountain." The silver-armored teen nodded her head and didn't speak. Looking at the so-called meeting hall that was in a mess, she felt that something wasn't right. In her heart, she actually recognized the situation here. However, thinking about it carefully, she couldn't think of a reason to. Thinking about it for a moment, she said in deep thought, "This Gantian mountain really is a country built on martial arts. Everyone loves martial arts and has some gut. The strength of the barbarian races all around is stronger than our Taishang people. There is a reason for that." Under the table in the meeting hall, Zhong Shou still didn't know that he had been labeled as an incapable ruler by the few people on the viewing platform. He was still shaking his head. "I am a little worried about the future of this meeting hall. If this goes on, where will the culture be? I really don't know if the decision to set up the meeting hall was right or wrong." When Renbo heard that, he said solemnly, "Ruler, why do you say that? In the past, I couldn't see it clearly, but now I feel that your highness is really wise." Zhong Shou turned his head in surprise. Renbo laughed before continuing, "No matter how wise a ruler is, he won't make no mistakes. In the history books, there were many rulers who were heroic in their prime, but because they ruled for too long or because they were too old, they slowly became muddle-headed. Often those rulers who started the country were talented and strategic. However, the people who inherited them weren't good enough. However, the people of the world are selfish and greedy. In the history of rulers, no one was willing to restrict their own power like the ruler." He continued, "With the meeting hall set up, there are many things in our Gantian mountain that can be discussed openly. Many conflicts of interests can be solved in a more logical way. The nobles in the city can also be at ease and not worry about their things being snatched away for no reason. The ruler is reducing his own power, but there are many things that have nothing to do with the ruler and will be taken care of by the meeting hall. Within the meeting hall, every 3 to 5 days, there would be an intense battle. Although it was mostly for their own interests, there were many times when they were truly for the people. Official style? Educated? If we can let the people of Gantian Mountain be rich and healthy, what's the use of all these?" Those civil officials of the great Shang dynasty were indeed cultured and had the bearing of an official. However, most of them resisted because the people had no way to make a living. Often it was these educated and decent people who were despicable in the dark and did all sorts of evil things. Anyways, thinking about this meeting hall system, there are many benefits. Sometimes I have thought about whether or not those saint emperors of the cloud desolate era ruled the world like this. Are our Confucian scriptures wrong or were they misinterpreted by others? Zhong Shou's brows furrowed. He didn't expect Renbo to spout out such a bunch of words. He was filled with praise for this meeting hall system. It seemed like he had deep grievances against the central dynasty. Speaking of which, this prime minister seemed to have come from the central continent. Before meeting his father, he had an unbearable experience. Actually, when he built this meeting hall, he didn't think too much. It was more so that when he wasn't there, he could use these meetings to restrict the cabinet. It was purely to be lazy. Even if he wasn't there, the administrative matters could be run smoothly. He felt a little embarrassed from the praise. Zhong Shoxin was delighted in his heart, his face showing a little embarrassment. "Prime Minister, you praise me too much. Zhong Shou doesn't have the ability to compare to those saint emperors." Renbo shook his head seriously. I didn't praise you too much. For me to be able to help the ruler for 2 generations is my life's fortune. Even in my next life, I am willing to be under the ruler. Even if I am a dog, it is better than being in the Taishang. Zhong Shou was startled, looking closely at Renbo. His eyes dimmed as he felt sad. This old prime minister looked old, but he wasn't young. Martial ancestor realm could extend one's lifespan by 80 years. At most, one could only live for 40 to 50 years. Just as he was in a daze, Chu Xue's voice rang out, "Young master, be careful." Zhong Shou was stunned as he looked in front of him. Then, he saw dozens of eggs fly over at the same time towards the bottom of the table. He didn't notice before, but now they were really close. He hurriedly dodged, but it was still too late. 2 eggs smashed onto his head. With 2 pa-ta sounds, the egg white and yolk splashed all over his face. Zhong Shou's face instantly turned green. He stood up abruptly, shattering the table into smithereens. Chu Shui originally couldn't help but laugh to herself. At this moment, she was frightened and quickly hid far away in case this young master, who had turned into a human-shaped storm, took it out on her. On the other side, Renbo was also expressionless as he silently distanced himself. In the entire meeting hall, those participants in the chaotic battle all felt that something wasn't right. They only felt an incomparably cold and gloomy aura enveloping the entire meeting hall. Thus, they all stopped and turned around to look in the direction of the ruler. When they saw Zhong Shou, who had 2 pieces of broken eggshells hanging on his head, they were all shocked. He was shocked, and his face was covered in cold sweat. Even Hu Qianqiu and Chai Yuan kept quiet out of fear. They cursed out in their hearts, who was the blind one to just throw the eggs at them? Why did he offend the ruler? Zhong Shou's eyes were cold as he swept the hall. Then, he stared at where the eggs came from. He was slightly startled, only to see that Hu Zhongyuan and Chai Zhou were fighting in a corner. Apart from these 2 people, there was no one else. He remembered that these 2 were sitting on the spectator seat. At some point in time, they had also jumped down. They were probably going to help their old father. Then, they started to fight. Zhong Shou's face became darker and darker. "Which one of you did this?" Chai Zhou and Hu Zhongyuan were originally fighting intensely, but at this moment, they felt that something wasn't right. When they heard that, they looked around and were frightened, their faces devoid of blood. He quickly jumped away and pointed at the other party without hesitation. "It's him." Zhong Shou scoffed coldly, his eyes were dark, his gaze like a knife as he swept the people below. Looking out, those participants who hadn't seen him before were still okay. Some who had followed him to attack cities and sweep several provinces, or who had gone down to the cloud ocean, felt their legs go soft as they half knelt on the ground. They were thinking to themselves, why did this ruler become more and more majestic in half a year, his aura becoming more and more terrifying? He had obviously weakened his own power and hadn't dealt with administrative matters for close to a year. However, for some reason, they respected this young monster king even more. How great! I built this meeting hall to let all of you supervise the cabinet and help me sort out my administration. However, you don't do proper work and just fight in the meeting hall. You have really grown up. If this goes on, there is no need for this meeting hall to continue. Why not just abolish it? Hu Qianxiu and Chai Yuan were instantly anxious. The faces of those participants were all ashen white. Renbo at the side frowned, bowing slightly. Ruler, please reconsider. Don't abolish good governance because of a moment of anger. Chapter 455. Renbo, who was at the side, also frowned, bowing slightly. Ruler, please reconsider. You can't destroy this good governance because of a moment of anger. Someone started, and it was the most famous prime minister in Gantian Mountain City, Renbo. The hundreds of speechless members of the Senate immediately burst into tears and begged for mercy. Chai Yuan sneakily used the garlic liquid in his sleeves to wipe his eyes. Instantly his eyes turned red, tears flowing down his old face as he said sincerely, "Ruler! Today we were disrespectful and offended the ruler's prestige. We deserve to die. However, you must not abolish the best policy in all of history just because of us. Ruler is wise and knows that governance can't be easily destroyed, laws can't be easily changed." Hu Qianxiu knelt at the side, mocking in his heart. The first time he met in the meeting hall, the first time he knew about the power and responsibility of this meeting. That Chai Yuan even personally told him that the ruler was too young. Jun Shang is really too young. This move is stupid beyond compare. What did he say at the start? He nodded his head in agreement. No. At that time, he scolded him. Hu Qianxiu was able to see the benefits of participating in the political discussion at first glance. At this moment, he couldn't cry and couldn't lower his face to learn from Chai Yuan. He could only say unhappily, "Your Highness, although Chai Yuan and I often fight, the moment we leave the meeting hall, we are good brothers who carry knives together. Moreover, all of us didn't mess up the governance matters. Today's tariff was because Chai Yuan bullied us too much. If it was a good governance that was beneficial to the people, there would be no stopping it. Wasn't the budget that Prime Minister took out this year the same?" Chai Yuan's expression changed as he stared viciously at Hu Qianxiu, like he wanted to turn his gaze into a knife to slice this fellow into thousands of pieces. How did he look like a life and death brother at all? Behind the two of them was a human race scholarly dressed middle-aged man, Minister Shushu. 2 years ago I was lucky enough to be chosen as a meeting member. At that time I didn't understand, but now I respect the ruler. This meeting hall is similar to what the ancient Saint Emperor did. Our human race lives under Gantian mountain rule and has always had a nervous heart. Only in recent years did I know that the ruler treats us all equally. Therefore, I beg the ruler to show mercy and take back the order." As his voice fell, he actually kowtowed 3 times in a row. His expression was solemn, and his forehead was already bleeding. Zhong Shou's expression also softened. He didn't really want to abolish the council system in the first place. He just wanted to regain some face. Now that there was a way out, he naturally took advantage of it. He said coldly, "Fine. I will keep this meeting hall for the time being." However, he had to be punished for his mistake in front of the palace. "Look at all of you, you're all disheveled. You're all old people, but today you look like 3-year-old children. What do you look like? Since you're not afraid of losing face, then I'll let you lose as much face as you want. Today, go back and reflect on your mistake. Think carefully. Tomorrow morning, all of you will scram to the streets and clean 1 street each. You are not allowed to use spiritual techniques for half a year." Hu Qianxiu, Chai Yuan and the others first relaxed, but then they were startled, their faces bitter. What were their identities? How could he sweep the streets? Wouldn't they lose all their face? They really wanted Zhong Shou to hit them dozens of times to make them feel better. Following which Zhong Shou's gaze shifted to Hu Zhongyuan and Chai Zhou. "The 2 of you are the most bold. Each of you will be hit 80 times and be punished for a month. I want 10,000 kilograms of it." After saying that, Zhong Shou still felt hatred. He had an idea and said, after being shown to the public, "Go clean the sewers for me for 3 years. You are not allowed to ask others to help." Hu Zhongyuan and Chai Zhou didn't mind at the start. Instead, they were secretly delighted. Anyways, their skin was thick and they weren't afraid. As for 10,000 kilograms of it, although it was tough, it wasn't too tough. However, when they heard the latter half, their faces were ashen white. The sewers were such a dirty place. Wouldn't that be asking for their lives? 3 years, not being able to use true qi or spiritual techniques, not being able to ask others to help. Their bodies would probably be unbearably smelly. They wouldn't be able to enter the 3 brothels and wouldn't have the face to find those girls they were familiar with. After Zhong Shou dealt with them, his face was cold as he walked towards the door with 2 pieces of eggshell. However, just as he took a step, he heard several anxious voices ring out. Ruler! Ruler, you can't. Today we have a proposal. Our Qianxue city wants to be directly ruled by Gantian Mountain. Ruler, please discuss this matter before you leave. That voice spread out from the upper left corner of the viewing area. It was a fatty whose face was filled with anxiousness. Beside him, a blue-robed middle-aged man was also complaining. My side is returning to the city and admires the ruler. The entire city is willing to be your people. Zhong Shou was startled, sweeping around the hall. Then, his brows furrowed. It was so messy, how was he going to discuss? Let's forget about today. We can discuss these 2 proposals in 7 days. It will only delay them for 7 days. Just as he said that, Hu Qianxiu and Chai Yuan's expressions changed, frowning. On the other hand, Renbo's eyes revealed a hint of hidden joy. Zhong Shou instantly understood. Hu Qianxiu and Chai Yuan weren't willing to do this. The real culprit was most likely Renbo. The reason why he caused such a huge commotion wasn't because of the Xuanxing bamboo tax, but to prevent Qianxue and Fanghui from being directly ruled by Gantian Mountain. He couldn't help but sigh. Politics was really complicated and unpredictable. He had to stay far away from it. At this moment, on the viewing platform, the silver-armored teen was totally startled. Zhong Shou wanted to abolish the meeting hall. It wasn't surprising for the nobles of Gantian Mountain to go all out to stop him. With power in their hands, naturally they wouldn't easily hand it back. However, the words of the Confucian scholar called Su Shu caused waves to rise in her heart. Was this meeting hall really imitating the ancient Saint Emperor? How was that possible? Since this person was a Confucian, how could he say such rebellious words? Looking at the scene, be it those meeting halls or the people listening in, their respect for the Monster King came from the bottom of their hearts and wasn't fake at all. She couldn't help but look at Zhong Shou. The 2 eggshells on his head were still there, making him look a little amusing. As for Qianxue and Fanghui, she heard the people beside her say that they were both city lords. The city lord was really strong and held the power of life and death. At this moment, it seemed like they were crying and begging to be directly ruled by Gantian Mountain to be someone else's subject. If it was their Taishang, it was still okay. However, this Gantian Mountain was just a small country. In her eyes, it was in a precarious situation and could be destroyed at any moment. She didn't understand. The silver-armored teen only felt that there was a thick layer of mist on the body of the teen such that she couldn't see clearly. Thinking about it for a moment, she scoffed coldly. Although he is a preposterous ruler, the hearts of the people are still there. He can still be used. Coming out from the meeting hall, the first thing Zhong Shou did was to return to the Hanyan Palace on Gantian Peak. He took a comfortable bath, washing his entire body clean and white, feeling really comfortable. Then, he brought Renbo and Chu Shui to the north of the city. 120 miles outside of the city was a giant army camp, occupying close to 300 miles. It encompassed the entire mountain range. The defense was really tight. A full 400,000 troops were stationed here. To say that there was a sentry every 10 steps and a sentry every 5 steps wasn't an exaggeration. The moment Zhong Shou arrived, there were dozens of intents that injected in from within. When they noticed that it was Zhong Shou, they all retreated. Not long later, the gates of the camp opened to the outside. A bunch of soldiers lined up in an orderly manner and welcomed them from within, weirdly lining up on both sides. The one at the front was Left Pillar General Chiu Wei. Behind him were dozens of commander-level generals, all at the Xuanwu ancestor realm. Zhong Shou's eyes lit up. Chiu Wei's army was starting to show result. Who knows what grade these soldiers were in the Gantian Mountain Army. Anyways, compared to the elite troops under the Han King, they were a little stronger. After meeting Chiu Wei, The dozen of them gathered together and headed straight for the core region of the camp. Zhong Shou rode his horse swiftly while looking around. As expected from a general who followed Zhong Weiran, who won every battle. The arrangement of the camp was really logical. Along the way, the soldiers and generals all had their own plans. They didn't make any weird movements because of his arrival. He couldn't help but turn his head and smile towards Chiu Wei, Uncle Chiu, a similar standard military town. How many are there in Argantian Mountain? Chiu Wei thought about it seriously before shaking his head. The 40 towns here are actually the weakest. The truly strong armies are at the border. Yunxia and Blazing Flame Mountains have recovered. They also have the support of the Thousand City Alliance and Donglin sect. Now they are ready to make a move. Just 3 days ago there were 10 conflicts at the border. Argantian Mountain needs to go all out to suppress them. Zhong Shou couldn't help but frown, thinking to himself that they were so quick. Chiu Wei continued, "In my eyes, it is best to add another 40 10,000-man towns to deal with them. Prime Minister Ren told me that we just need to take in a few less cities under our jurisdiction and we can handle it." Zhong Shou was startled, looking at Rinbo once more, only to see that the latter was really calm, without any expression at all. He couldn't help but shake his head. He even had a motive. The mastermind behind the battle in the meeting hall was definitely this traitorous official. "I will think about this matter." 40 towns. Not only did they need 400,000 elite martial cultivators, but they also needed the corresponding equipment, spending no less than 100 million. Zhong Shou didn't agree nor disagree. Looking at the place where the Blood Cloud cavalry was hiding, they were about to arrive. Suddenly a person appeared in front of them, blocking in front of them. Xiao Han. Zhong Shou was startled, looking towards Rinbo with a questioning gaze. Only to see the latter smile helplessly. Close to 30% of the spiritual weapons and armor that Argantian Mountain bought were bought from Kongqi sect. We need their help, so naturally we can't stop them from entering. We can only try our best not to let them come into contact with that important place. The so-called important place naturally referred to where the Blood Cloud cavalry was housed. Zhong Shou nodded slightly. However, just as he got close, he heard Xiao Han laugh coldly. "Ruler rushed here to see the Blood Cloud cavalry?" Chapter 456. Blood Cloud Cavalry? Zhong Shouxin was shocked, but his expression didn't change. He glanced at the people around him, thinking to himself that someone leaked the secret. However, Chiu Wei and Renbo were both expressionless and couldn't see anything. He laughed out loud. "Elder Chiao, are you talking about the Blood Cloud cavalry that disappeared along with Wulya country for 10,000 years? Could it be that Elder is joking with me? How would my Gantian Mountain have such elite cavalry?" He knew that during these 2 years, Xiao Han had been getting better and better in Kongqi sect. From outer sect deacon to inner sect deacon, in the end he charged to the position of elder. Today, Kongqi sect had a small half of their business in his hands, and in the future they would have to rely on him. Which was why, even as the ruler of a country, he couldn't toss this person aside. "Act. Ruler, continue to act." Xiao Han still laughed coldly, a bright glow appearing in his eyes. "You can hide it from others, but you can't hide it from me. Those 3,500 sets of Blood Cloud cavalry armor and Blood Cloud halberds were personally sold by me to your highness. Recently, along with the 600,000 spiritual weapons and armor that my Kongqi sect provided, your Gantian Mountain has collected a total of 2.4 million Grade 1 spiritual weapons and armor. Most of them came from the central continent." Zhong Shou was speechless. He didn't know what to say. He knew that although this matter was done in secret, to hide it from Kongqi sect, who had a high position in artifact crafting, was really difficult. Especially when the other party was paying special attention to the surveillance, it was even more difficult. "That's true. However, Elder Chiao, What does these armor have to do with the Blood Cloud Cavalry? My Gantian Mountain is just protecting ourselves. As for those 3,500 sets of Blood Cloud Cavalry equipment, they did come from your hands, but we also suffered a huge loss because of that. It isn't like you don't know the flaws of the armor? Moreover, even if there is equipment, where would I find the cultivation method and manpower? Xiao Han was startled, following which he laughed and shook his head. It is because I personally sold the equipment of the Blood Cloud Cavalry, which is why I paid so much attention. About a year and a half ago, His Highness had ordered people to gather supplementary materials to repair the flaws in the Blood Cloud Cavalry's armor. During these 2 years, there were many Xiantian Peak experts who disappeared for no reason. Recently there were many spiritual herbs that your Gantian mountains swept up. Xiao Han had once specially asked someone to analyze the pill formula. It should be a kind of spirit pill that could help people break through bottlenecks and raise their cultivation level. It was just that he didn't know what the main ingredient was. Other than that, Prime Minister Ren had also invited at least 40 rank 5 weapon refiners, but they were nowhere to be seen. Combining all these clues, Xiao Han deduced that His Highness has rebuilt the Blood Cloud Cavalry. Finally, he sighed and said, "Your Highness can trust others, but can't you trust me, Xiao Han? I am now." In fact, he had long been tied together with Jun Shang. Life and death, decline and glory, they were all one. The ruler was really ambitious, and the 3 million elites were a level higher than the central dynasty. Not long later, he would be able to gather all the spiritual weapons and armor. With such strength, he could have swept through Donglin long ago. However, ruler didn't send it out because he was worried about Lingyun and mysterious cloud spirit sect. Or maybe he acted weak to bait them into attacking. I, Xiaohan, came to ask the ruler just to see how strong the current Gantian mountain is. In case when ruler becomes enemies with the Donglin sects, our Kongqi sect would stand on the wrong side. Gantian mountain's orders these years have taken care of us a lot. Ruler probably wouldn't be willing to see us lean towards Lingyun and mysterious cloud spirit sect, right? Zhong Shou was in deep thought. This matter was really a headache. This Xiao Han was usually really honest, but this time he was really smart. Slightly weighing the pros and cons, Zhong Shou smiled. Forget it. Since Elder has guessed it, then I won't hide it from you. This time you can follow me to take a look. However, Elder should know that this matter is still a secret to our Gantian mountain. Xiao Han was immediately overjoyed and bowed his head to express his thanks. A look of shock flashed across his eyes before disappearing. Guessing it was one thing, proving it was another. This Gantian mountain actually allowed the Blood Cloud Cavalry to appear in the world once more. The group of them continued forwards, totally drilling into the mountain. They went in another 30 miles before a wide valley appeared in front of their eyes. There was actually a camp built here. At this moment, outside of the camp, there were a full 2,800 cavalry wearing blood-colored armor and helmets, holding blood-colored halberds in their hands, lined up in an orderly manner outside of the camp. They were all grade 4 peak dragon horned winged horses, similarly covered in blood-colored armor. The blood-colored glow that surged into the heavens could be seen from 50 miles away. Even if they didn't make any movements, just standing there solemnly, they gave off a fierce killing intent. Zhong Shou's eyes lit up, filled with excitement. A full 2,800 cavalry. As expected, it was the number that Renbua and Yin Yang reported to him. Amongst them, there were many who had ulterior motives or were half-hearted, trying to cheat the spirit salamander blood essence pill. However, as long as these people cultivated the Blood Cavalry Kill Heart Sutra, he didn't need to worry about them betraying him. This was a total of 2,800 Stage 5 powerhouses. After switching to Blood Cavalry Kill, he was equipped with the completely repaired Blood Cloud Cavalry armor and Blood Cloud halberd that had reached the 6th level. The strength of this cavalry army was even much stronger than the 900 common people mysterious dragon warriors that he led a year and a half ago. As for the Dingxi iron cavalry of the Han King, they were all grade 6 cultivators. However, they didn't have a suitable cavalry heart sutra, and also didn't have a set of armor. On the battlefield, it wasn't worth mentioning. In front of his blood cloud cavalry, they would definitely be crushed. Xiao Han was similarly stunned. He stared fixedly at the scene before him, unable to believe his own eyes. It wasn't an illusion. In front of him, there were 2,800 blood-colored cavalry. It wasn't the lowest 200 he had imagined, nor was it the highest 400 he had imagined. It was a full 2,800. The Blood Cloud Cavalry had 100 people as a cavalry unit and 300 as a unit. Then, there were a full 9 units here. With a unit of Blood Cloud Cavalry, they could sweep 30,000 people, the elite standard troops of the Central Dynasty. Just the combined strength of these 2,800 cavalrymen was enough to single-handedly trample an army of less than 3 million. With such an army charging, killing generals and snatching flags, no one would be able to block them on the battlefield. If there were unparalleled generals leading them, they would be even more invincible. Even their Kongqi sect had Dao soldiers, but the Dao soldiers they had were all Dao soldiers. However, their overall strength was less than half of the Blood Cloud Cavalry. He expected that Zhong Shou would have a trump card that could go up against Ling Yun and Mysterious Cloud Spirit Sect. However, he didn't expect that this trump card would be so strong. Taking in a deep breath, Xiaohan suppressed the ripples in his heart, trying to ask calmly, "Your Highness, have the flaws of the Blood Cloud Cavalry armor been fixed?" Zhong Shou smiled when he heard that, nodding his head, not hiding anything. The weakness of the Blood Cloud Cavalry in the past was due to the lack of Blood Hero God Iron. Roughly a year and a half ago, my Gantian Mountain was fortunate enough to find a Blood Cloud God Iron mine. This was all thanks to Long Ru. After returning from the Dragon Gathering Mountain that day. After gathering back from the Dragon Gathering Formation, Zhong Shou ordered people to investigate Long Rua's tracks during those few months. It only took them a few months to arrive at the location of the mine. Coincidentally, it was within Gantian Mountain's jurisdiction. Naturally, there was no reason for Ling Yun's sect to continue occupying it. The corner of Xiaohan's eyes twitched. "Then how many Blood Cloud Cavalry armor does your Highness have?" This time Zhong Shou hesitated, replying in a vague manner, "Recently my Gantian Mountain and Song Xingdao have some contact." Xiaohan was startled once more. Zhong Shou's words seemed totally unrelated. However, he knew that the number of Blood Cloud armor halberds in the hands of the common people path exceeded that of their Kongqi sect. Who knows, he might even have the blueprints for the Blood Cloud armor halberds. Even if he bought 4,000 from Song Xingdao, it was enough to raise the Blood Cloud Cavalry to 7,500. In the past, Wulya country had less than 30,000 Blood Cloud Cavalry, and they were already invincible. Tens of sects were massacred, their reputation even above that of the Central Dynasty. Then, in the future, what would happen to Gantian Mountain with 7,500 Blood Cloud Cavalry? With the Blood Hero God Iron Mine in their hands, Gantian Mountain only needed to obtain the blueprints and they would be able to continuously provide armor and halberds. In that instance, Xiaohan had a violent thought rise up. He wanted to go all out to work with the sects to kill this monster that was about to grow. However, he decisively dispelled that thought. The current Gantian Mountain strength was already above that of Kongqi sect. Thinking about how this power that could be on the same level as the 10 shrines was raised by him due to his carelessness, Xiaohan felt his heart palpitate. Waves rose up in his heart. In the end, Xiaohan gave out a bitter smile. Today, everyone thinks that the ruler is cutting down his troops and that it is a suicidal move. However, I know that the ruler is planning far and wide. Once the spiritual wave starts, anyone below Mythic Master is useless on the battlefield. It is a good thing to get rid of those mobs. Based on what I know, the 3,000 Black Fox Iron Cavalry, 4,000 Iron Tiger Halberd Warriors, 4,000 Wind Splitting Mo Knife Warriors, 4,000 Wind Bear Mountain Splitting Guards, 5,000 Eye Wolf Guards, 2,000 Pill Crane Cavalry are the true core elites of Gantian Mountain. Although they didn't increase much in this year and a half, actually these tens of thousands of people are all Xiantian experts, right? Along with these 9 units of Blood Cloud War Cavalry, the ruler's wings are strong. Within Donglin Cloud Continent, no one can stop him. However, even today, the ruler is still hiding his claws and teeth. What is his intention? Does he really want to wipe out Lingyun's sect? Zhong Shou was stunned, looking weirdly at Xiaohan. It seems like this fellow spent a lot of effort during this year and a half. These were all the secrets of Gantian Mountain. Who knew that Xiaohan actually found out about it so clearly? Chapter 457. Destroy Lingyun's sect? Elder Qiao must be joking. That Lingyun's sect has a total of 8 grade 9 expert. How can our Gantian Mountain be their match? As for the combat strength of the Blood Cloud Cavalry, we need to test them to know. Zhong Shou laughed involuntarily and shook his head. Today he indeed didn't have plans to wipe out Lingyun's sect and didn't have the strength. At most, he wanted to kick this sect which he had such deep grievances with in the last life out of Donglin Cloud Continent. After saying that, Zhong Shou didn't bother about Xiaohan anymore. He increased the speed of the horse, and not long later, he was in front of the camp gate. Those 2,800 blood armor cavalry instantly bent down, using their hands to knock on the armor in front of their chest as they bowed towards Zhong Shou, bringing about the sound of armor clashing. Close to half of the cavalry had a fanatical look in their eyes. Zhong Shoxin knew that these were people who had cultivated the blood cavalry kill to a certain level. This was why they were the most loyal to him, close to worshipping him. As for the other portion, they should have just joined for less than a year. Their expressions could be considered calm, but they were also really respectful. Zhong Shoxin's feelings were really complicated. What he hated the most in the past was such evil techniques that controlled one's heart. However, this time he had no choice but to rely on this technique to amass strength. After obtaining such benefits, he still grumbled about how the blood cavalry kill wasn't the right path. He was really a hypocrite. Yin Yang and Zhong Gang stood together. At this moment, they both went up to Zhong Shou's side. After greeting him, Zhong Gang started to grumble. Ruler, it's best if I don't be the right pillar general. Those official matters are so annoying. Why don't you move me to the Blood Cloud Cavalry? Even if I am only a commander, I am willing. Zhong Shou smiled when he heard that. The guilt in his heart subsided a little. He had long wanted to change Zhong Gang from the right pillar general position. He knew that his uncle Gang could only be a general and not a commander. Unfortunately, during this year, he didn't have a suitable choice. Acting like he didn't hear it, Zhong Shou turned towards Yin Yang, who didn't say a word, and asked, "Are you ready?" Yin Yang nodded his head, raising his hand to signal. Only to see that at the other corner of the valley, a loud explosion sounded out. Everyone looked over to where the sound came from. Only then did they notice that there were thousands of iron cages placed there. Xiao Han took a look and his pupils constricted. Within the cages were all grade 6 beasts. They seemed to come from below the cloud ocean, with a demonic nature. He couldn't see through the strength of Gantian Mountain. It was easy to kill these elite beasts in the abyss, but to capture them was extremely difficult. Capturing 1,000 grade 6 beasts without enough power was an impossible matter. However, recently the Gantian Cloud ship fleet had headed down the Cloud Ocean a few times. The Donglin sects paid attention to it and didn't see anything unusual. Did Gantian Mountain have another hidden squadron? Along with the iron cages being opened, Those grade 6 beasts which were restless all charged out. Then, they roared and charged towards the camp. At this moment, Yin Yang opened his mouth once more with an indifferent expression. Ever since I received the news of Ruler's return, I stopped feeding him. These beasts have starved them for 2 days. Just now they were all fed with the maniac strength pill. Their strength can reach the peak of grade 6, even half a step to grade 7. Xiao Han was startled once more. The so-called maniac strength pill was a pill that could ignite one's potential. It could cause humans or beasts to go berserk, temporarily gaining 2 or 3 times the strength. However, after the matter, one would suffer from huge losses and lose lifespan. The beasts under the cloud ocean grew up in a cruel place, and were originally really strong. After feeding them the maniac strength pill, their combat strength would reach half a step to grade 7. Just as his expression changed once more, the 2,800 blood cloud cavalry finally moved. First, they slowly charged forwards in an orderly manner, then they suddenly sped up. Like a blood-red arrow, it shot towards the direction of the beast horde. Just as the blood beast tide and the blood beast tide clashed, 2,800 blood cloud halberds were raised up high and slashed down together. It brought about a blood-colored shadow, and then fresh blood flew everywhere. The moment they came into contact, there were close to 400 grade 6 beasts that were instantly killed. The following process could be said to be trampling. Everywhere the blood cloud cavalry passed, they were pretty much unharmed. Those beasts that had consumed the maniac strength pill had no way to fight back, and were all killed. Zhong Shou's sharp eyes could see that the blood rain and blood mist that the corpses gave off would turn into a blood-colored mist and be absorbed into the blood armor. Those blood-colored halberds seemed to have come alive, crazily absorbing blood. Pretty much every beast they killed, the aura of the blood cloud cavalry would be a little stronger. This was the true mystery of the blood cloud cavalry. The blood cloud cavalry armor and halberds all relied on absorbing the essence energy of the dead to temporarily increase the strength of the person using it, recovering vital energy and stamina. Which was why on the battlefield, the more people they killed, the stronger the combat strength of the blood cloud cavalry would be. When the blood cloud armor was fully swallowed, it could even raise the lowest 4-meridian martial ancestor to the Xuanwu ancestor realm. It was similar to his heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique. However, one relied on oneself and was much smarter, while the other relied on external strength. In the past, Song Xingdao broke the secret technique of the blood cloud cavalry by using spirit masters to interfere with the absorption of the blood essence energy. Although the blood cloud cavalry was strong, when they had no way to continue, they could only be defeated. In a short few breaths, there wasn't a single grade 6 beast that could stand upright in the valley. 2,800 iron cavalry were split into 9 units, cutting through the beast wave. They also split up and attacked together, forming a charging formation on the battlefield. Their coordination was perfect, following which they split up and chased in all directions. Pretty much none of the beasts were able to escape. Xiaohan felt bitter in his heart when he saw that. This monster king actually knew about the blood cavalry kill heart sutra. He was also shocked. Where did Zhong Shou get these 2,400 dragon horned winged horses from? Speechless for a moment, Xiaohan couldn't help but say, "Congratulations, ruler, building such a strong army." As expected from the blood cloud cavalry that was famous during the ancient times, how amazing! His last sentence was filled with sincerity. These beasts that needed at least 3 of the same grade to barely deal with were being slaughtered by the blood cloud cavalry without any ability to fight back. Their combat strength was so strong that no one could have any thoughts of betrayal. Zhong Shou knew what he was thinking about, too lazy to bother about him. He still focused on the group of blood armor cavalry in the distance. After killing the last grade 6 beast, these blood cloud cavalry automatically reorganized their formation. It was still 9 blood-colored arrowheads. They were really orderly and could fight at any moment. Only then did Zhong Shou nod his head in satisfaction. He found the right person to hand the Blood Cloud Cavalry to Yin Yang, following which he took out a set of Blood Cloud Cavalry armor from his Heaven and Earth bag, and wore it on his body. The Grade 5 dragon horned winged horse under him also changed into a blood-colored horse armor. Behind him he held a blood-colored halberd, smiling as he asked everyone, "In the end it is just Grade 6, I can't see the true limit of the Blood Cloud Cavalry. There are no strong enemies nearby, so we can only find trouble with those Een flood dragons. Do you all dare to follow me to the evil spirit moat?" Although he was asking, Zhong Shou didn't wait for the others to reply before he led the horse over. Yin Yang and the 2,800 Blood Cloud Cavalry were connected to Zhong Shou. They didn't hesitate and followed. Behind him, Renbua, Xiaohan, and the others looked at each other before following behind on their horses. The evil spirit moat wasn't far from this valley, less than 10 miles of land. This place was said to be a battlefield during the Cloud Desolate era. An expert slashed out with a sword and killed tens of millions of people on the spot, leaving a 13,000-mile-long sword mark. Like a semicircle, it wrapped around the east side of Gantian Mountain City. Due to the grievances of the people who died in battle, this evil spirit moat became a gathering place for evil spirits and evil spirits. This was why there was that iron chain bridge in front of Jinshan Pass. It was personally crafted by a Saint Realm expert. Not only could it connect things, but it could also suppress the Een and evil beings within the moat. When Zhong Shou led all the Blood Cloud Cavalry into the evil spirit moat, he only felt that the surroundings were filled with incomparably violent sinister winds that surged endlessly. However, no evil beings dared to approach. They were forced far away by the vast blood-colored glow. They swept along the moat and dashed for tens of miles. Only then did they hear dragon-like roars. It was 20 giant flood dragons whose bodies were covered in a green Een mist. They drilled out from the thick mist and pounced over. Everyone's expression froze slightly. Although these Een flood dragons didn't have any strength, they were all true Grade 7. With the blood of the mysterious Een dragon, not only was their combat strength far stronger than soul beasts, but they could also go up against same grade peak beasts. Zhong Shou laughed out loud. With a thought, numerous energy explosions broke out within the blood-colored cavalry. The energy of thousands of people connected. The blood-colored halberd in Zhong Shou's hand slashed out. A blood light flashed as 4 Een flood dragons pounced at him. Before they could react, they were slashed apart by the halberd glow. Then, their Een soul bodies were smashed into pieces. Zhong Shou was perfectly fine, casually stepping over the many Een flood dragons. Behind him was Yin Yang, as well as those 9 division commanders and 100 cavalry captains, whose strength were all at the Xuanwu ancestor level. Many blood-colored halberd glows flashed one after another. The 2,800 halberds had completely sliced the 20 over level 7 Een dragons into pieces. They were unable to form back into shape. At this moment, a furious roar spread out from the distance. 2 Een flood dragons that were even larger in size charged ferociously. They both had dragon horns on their heads and dragon legs on their stomachs, similar to his lightning-winged flood dragon. Peak Grade 8. Zhong Shou's eyes lit up. These 2 Een dragons could be said to be half a step to Grade 9. If they worked together, they could even go up against Grade 9 experts. Chapter 458. Good timing. After those 2 Grade 8 Een flood dragons spread out their bodies, they were 3,000 feet tall. Their bodies were so thick that 40 people could wrap their arms around them. They opened their bloody mouths and roared as they charged over. A vast soul suppression pressed down, bringing with it the aura of a dragon. It made one unable to resist at all, only wanting to flee far away. Renbua and Xiaohan followed behind, their faces ashen white. The difference between Grade 6 and Grade 7 was 100 times. The combat strength difference between Grade 7 and Grade 8 was also over 10 times. These Grade 8 peak Een Flood Dragons were enough to sweep those 20 Een Flood Dragons from before. Zhong Shou laughed, following the Blood Cavalry Kill Heart Sutra to move the vital energy in his body. The energy channels that were built outside his body crazily absorbed the true chi of the thousands of people behind him. It caused his body to be covered in a thin layer of blood mist. Just as those 2 Een Flood Dragons each spat out a Een power that could freeze one's bone marrow. The blood-colored halberd in Zhong Shou's hand shone once more, at the same time he hollered out, "Slash!" The blood-red halberd light suddenly turned 10,000 feet long, slicing up heaven and earth. It wiped out all the Een power within 1,000 feet. When the blood-colored light slashed past, the 2 Een Flood Dragons angrily roared in unwillingness. Then, the 2,800 blood-armored cavalry charged forward like lightning. That giant flood dragon body was like those Grade 7 Een Flood Dragons before, dissolving piece by piece. It turned into pieces of pure Een power and scattered within the gorge. At the same time, 2 extremely pure and vast essence energy were forcefully sucked in by the large halberd in Zhong Shou's hand. A portion of it replenished what Zhong Shou had lost. The other portion was fed back to the 2,800 Blood Cloud Cavalry through the 5-element energy channels. The Blood Cloud Cavalry armor and halberd could only absorb essence energy through blood. However, Zhong Shou wasn't restricted by that. He cultivated the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique and could swallow anything in heaven and earth, even if it was an invisible being like the Een Flood Dragons. After completely killing the 2 Grade 8 Een Flood Dragons, the aura of the Blood Cloud Cavalry instantly rose to the peak. Almost all of the evil beings within the Evil Spirit Ravine were being chased away, crazily fleeing in another direction. Even those Type 7 and Type 8 existences did not dare to face him head-on. He swept his way through the Evil Spirit Ravine for more than 300 miles. The 2,800 great halberds were actually unstoppable. There were no evil beings that could resist for a moment. It was unknown how many demons and monsters were killed. Just the Grade 8 Een Flood Serpents alone, he had killed 6 of them. Zhong Shou also took advantage of the situation, taking a total of 4 Class 8 Een Flood Dragon Soul Cores along the way. As time passed, the entire cavalry troop was surrounded by a faint red blood cloud. Sometimes there was no need for the halberd to be drawn, as the evil spirits that were caught up to would be crushed into pieces by the bloody clouds. Previously, Renbo was still a little nervous, but at this moment, he was agitated. It was indeed the cavalry that the Wulya kingdom relied on to dominate the world in the ancient cloud desolate era. Such an invincible aura was a surprise that far exceeded what he had expected. He could pretty much imagine that this blood cloud cavalry would sweep Donglin in the future, trampling over thousands of troops on the battlefield. Just as the cavalry troop was galloping along the Evil Spirit Ravine, slowly getting close to the Iron Chain Bridge in front of Jinshan Pass, another dragon roar rang out from the green Een mist in front of them. The vast sound wave struck hundreds of miles of land. Some of the stone pieces that were not that sturdy were smashed into pieces along with the sound, exploding into dust. Even the blood mist around the Blood Cloud Cavalry was struck by the dragon roar and shook. However, in just a moment it stabilized once more. An arrow-like sharp glow appeared from within Samarim, shooting into the distance, only to see that it was also a Een Flood Dragon that had started to transform into a dragon. Scales appeared on its body. The size of its body was several times larger than the few Grade 8 Een Flood Dragons from before. The Class 7 Jiao dragons that he had killed earlier were nothing more than insignificant snakes in front of it. Grade 9. Just one look and Zhong Shou was sure that this was a Grade 9 strong presence. Compared to the Water Fairy Lake, that sleeping Een hornless dragon was just a little weaker. He was really excited in his heart as he sped up the horse and galloped over. Unexpectedly, when Zhong Shou was 100,000 feet away, this grade 9 giant flood dragon actually showed fear, not daring to have a head-on battle with the blood cloud cavalry whose aura was soaring. Its body flew into the air as it crazily fled into the distance. Those 2,800 dragon horn-winged horses were only grade 4 beasts after all. Only 9 of them were grade 5 and above winged horses. Even if they went all out, they wouldn't be able to catch up. The distance between both sides was pulled further and further apart. From 100,000 feet to 40 to 50,000 feet. Seeing that they weren't able to catch up, the mount beneath them was already showing signs of exhaustion. A cold glow flashed in Zhong Shou's eyes as he scoffed coldly. "Gutless sneaky, are you worthy of transforming into a dragon?" When his voice landed, Zhong Shou tossed out. The vital energy and true qi of 2,800 people instantly merged into one. The blood-colored halberd in his hand also left his hand at this moment, and flew forward in a slash. The blood-colored glow shot out 10,000 feet. In this wide evil spirit moat, it brought with it an eye-piercing blood-colored glow. Wherever it passed, all the evil beings, even if they only brushed against it, were instantly annihilated and turned into ashes. That grade 9 flood dragon gave out a roar once more. This time it wasn't to threaten, but to use all the strength in its body to crazily struggle to escape. However, that blood-colored halberd light was much faster. In an instant, it crossed hundreds of thousands of feet and slashed onto the body of the flood dragon. It actually sliced it in half at the waist, slicing off the tail of this 10,000 feet long giant flood dragon. However, the other half of its body was crazily fleeing at an even faster speed. It totally pulled apart the distance between both sides. In just a moment it was nowhere to be seen. Zhong Shou continued to run, picking up the halberd that he tossed out once more. Then, he ordered the grade 5 dragon horned winged horse under him to slow down. It caused the entire cavalry force to slowly stop. At this moment, although the entire blood cloud cavalry force was filled with energy. However, some of the cavalry whose cultivation wasn't high enough were showing signs of exhaustion. Zhong Shou himself also felt that he couldn't take it anymore. Looking at the mist in the distance, he couldn't help but scold his bad luck. He was originally planning to make this grade 9 flood dragon submit to him and obtain a protector beast for Ruoshui. In the future, when it evolves into a mysterious dragon, it could be of help to her. However, now he could only look on as the enemy fled into the distance. This was the strongest grade 9 in the cloud world. They didn't even dare to face him. What a loss of face. Xiaohan, who was behind, felt really complicated as he looked on, his heart palpitating. These 2,800 blood cloud cavalry had the ability to go up against grade 9. They were even strong to the point that the grade 9 flood dragon fled at the sight of them. Below grade 9, all grade 8 experts were suppressed. As for their Kongqi sect, they only had 4 grade 9 experts. Although they hid some of their strength, it wasn't by much. It seemed like they could wipe out the blood cloud cavalry, but don't forget that Zhong Shou still had 3 million troops under him. 3,000 Black Fox Iron Cavalry, 4,000 Iron Tiger Halberd Warriors, 4,000 Wind Splitting Mo Knife Warriors, 4,000 Wind Bear Mountain Splitting Guards, 5,000 Eye Wolf Guards, 2,000 Pill Crane Cavalry. This was 22,000 Xiantian experts. Apart from that, Zhong Shou had a full 30,000 Guards Cavalry, all Mythic Master level. There were also 3,000 Xiantian experts. Before this Gantian mountain monster king became a disciple of Old Man Long Ying. The sect could still use the seniors of the sect, who went to other worlds to suppress him. However, today, even this external help was totally suppressed. 9 Dragon Phantoms, 10th level Holy Spirit. It was said that in ancient times, even End Realm experts had to back off from this sword technique. It was said that if that Old Man Long Ying didn't break through, He was just a few decades away from dying. However, before he died, none of the sects would dare to act rashly. Renbo waited for a moment. Zhong Shou didn't have any more battles to fight, so he rode his horse to the side of Zhong Shou. "Ruler, I think we can go back. We already know about the combat strength of the Blood Cloud Cavalry. The evil spirit moat this time is enough to protect Argantian Mountain for 10 years. The evil spirit moat had the iron chains of Jinshan Pass suppressing it. The Yin spirits within, even if they were grade 9, couldn't escape. However, 10,000 years of nurturing caused the Yin energy within to be really strong, causing some weaknesses to appear in the seal. Occasionally, there would be some grade 7 and below spirit beasts that would escape from the moat. In the past, the Dongling sects would clean it up, but as it wasn't a huge problem, they didn't pay much attention to it. Before Zhong Weiran built the city, although this Gantian plains had 5,000 miles of fertile land, very few people dared to live in it. It wasn't until Gantian Mountain rose up and sent troops to clear it out that this place slowly became peaceful. However, each year there would be some people who would die in the hands of the Yin beings that escape. Along the way, the number of demons and monsters he had killed was already in the millions. Most of them were forcefully crushed by the red mist. This area of the evil spirit ravine had already suffered great losses. To recover, it would take at least 10 years. Zhong Shou acknowledged and didn't comment. He turned around and smiled at Xiaohan, who had a lot on his mind. "What if I give a spiritual house to your Kongqi sect? How will your sect repay me?" Xiaohan was startled and didn't react in an instant. A moment later, his face flushed red, his emotions surging to the point where he couldn't control himself. His hands were also trembling. Give a spiritual house? However, the 19 Xiantian spiritual houses in this world already had owners. No new spiritual houses were found. Then which one was Zhong Shou going to give? Was it the 3rd spiritual house Mysterious Cloud Spirit Sect, or the 15th spiritual house Xuansu Sect? All of a sudden, his thoughts were in a mess and he instinctively wanted to agree. However, when he was about to speak, he came back to his senses and forcefully changed his words. "This matter is too important and concerns the rise and fall of our Kongqi sect. I don't dare to make the decision and have to ask the sect elders." However, he sighed in his heart. He knew that the few elders of the sect wouldn't reject. Their Kongqi sect was totally tied to Gantian Mountain this time. They were bound together for good or ill. Chapter 459. Seeing Xiaohan's emotions fluctuate for a moment before he calmed down, Zhong Shouxin praised. In the past, he had underestimated this elder Xiaohan. It was normal that he didn't agree. If Xiaohan didn't ask the sect about such a huge matter and just agreed, he wouldn't be at ease. "Okay. I beseech your esteemed sect to give me a reply as soon as possible. Apart from that, my Gantian Mountain wants to order 400,000 spiritual armor and weapons. Is your sect willing to pay for the materials?" Qiu Wei and Zhong Gang were delighted when they heard that. They knew that Zhong Shou had agreed to their suggestion to expand the army by 400,000. Xiaohan didn't hesitate when he heard that, nodding his head. "I, Xiaohan, can make the decision." He knew that Gantian Mountain was rich and strong, and their hidden strength far exceeded the expectations of the sections. No matter whether or not their Kongqi sect formed an alliance with Gantian Mountain, they didn't need to worry that Zhong Shou wouldn't be able to repay the debt. If they were allies, strengthening Gantian Mountain's strength would increase their chances of winning this battle. He was only worried that if Kongqi sect wanted to obtain enough benefits, they would need to invest a lot of strength. The grade 9 elders in the sect. They would need to join the battle. Zhong Shou smiled and thanked him. He led the horse, leading the close to 3,000 blood-colored cavalry to step onto the west bank of the evil spirit moat. Then, he saw a golden talisman dancing in the sky. Just as he broke free from the Yin mist, he flew down. It was a message talisman. Due to the power of the evil spirit mote, it was unable to find Zhong Shou's exact location, which was why it circled in midair. At this moment, when he appeared, he flew down. Zhong Shou took it in his hands. In just a moment his lips curled up. Interesting. He clenched his fists and crushed the message talisman into pieces. Renbo found it weird and asked curiously, "What exactly happened to make Jun Shang so angry? Did something happen in Tsang Shengdao Palace?" Under his rule, Gantian Mountain was peaceful and the people were peaceful. There were also strong troops protecting, so, naturally, nothing would happen to them. However, recently he heard that the Sword Prince Jueyu had already defeated nearly all the young experts of the Tailing sect, the head of the 10 shrines. At any moment, they could find the common people's vast habitat. Zhong Shou shook his head and chuckled. His voice had returned to normal. It's Blazing Flame Mountain City and Cloud Gap Mountain City. Each of them sent someone over to request an audience with me. In addition, the emissary of the Thousand City Alliance also accompanied them. It seems that they want to return the land that they ceded. Renbo and Qiu Wei raised their eyebrows with a hint of anger. In Xiao Han's heart, an incomparably absurd feeling arose. If it was before today, his judgment would still be undecided. However, at this moment, he knew that Gantian Mountain had a 100% chance of winning. From beginning to end, Zhong Shou's target had always been the forces behind the Thousand City Alliance and the Blazing Flame City. Did Xiong Yufeng have water in his head? Did he not want to live anymore? Wasn't he asking to die? Zhong Gang's teeth chattered as he laughed coldly. Speaking of which, Blazing Flame and Yunxia cities are prepared to rely on the strength of the Thousand City Alliance? Zhong Shou didn't reply, following which he said, "There are also 2 people who say that they are Taishang emissaries. They are under orders from the Emperor and say that they have a decree to announce." Renbo was stunned. Taishang? Central Dynasty? Why did the Taishang emissaries come to their Donglin Cloud continent, such a barbaric land? He directly changed into his armor and clothes, splitting ways with the Blood Cloud cavalry. Rushing swiftly, in an hour, he returned to Gantian Mountain City. After fighting for close to 4 hours in the evil spirit moat, Zhong Shou's body was covered in a large amount of yin and evil energy. This was why he sat quietly for a moment, drawing in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to light up a spiritual flame, burning around his body for close to 8 minutes. After totally expelling it, Zhong Shou headed towards a side hall within the Hanyan Palace. Before he got close, he heard a clamor from within. Zhong Shou originally didn't care, but just as he was about to step in, he heard the sound of porcelain shattering. He couldn't help but stop in his tracks and listen for a moment. Only to hear a cold voice, "Sorry? The tea is cold. So cold, I couldn't hold it properly, I am sorry. Speaking of which, the few of us have already waited here for 4 hours. When is your ruler willing to show himself? Is this how your Gantian Mountain treats guests?" After that voice finished speaking, an aged voice followed. The voice was cold as it said, "So what if I am? In the past, I was ordered by the late ruler to head to Yunxia Mountain to meet Fengnu City Lord, but I was ignored for half a day. If you are impatient, you can leave. As for this tea set, it is okay. This item is produced in Longzhi province, and was said to be the property of your city lord. My Gantian Mountain can have as much as we want." Zhong Shou smiled, recognizing that it was the old priest Zhong Ling's voice. As expected, he was experienced, going head to head, not giving in at all. At this moment, another voice rang out, "Old priest Zhong, I heard that only by knowing one's place can one avoid trouble. A hero needs to know the situation to avoid trouble. If Gantian Mountain was strong, we wouldn't dare to do this. However, the current situation is unknown to others. Could it be that old priest Zhong can't see clearly? I heard that recently your ruler has become arrogant. Before this, I didn't believe it, but now I do. Zhong Shou Monster King is young and doesn't know the importance of things. Priest, you are an old official who followed Weiren Monster King, why don't you try to persuade him? Zhong Shou's lips curled up coldly, not hesitating anymore as he stepped in. Following which, he didn't look at the people within the hall, directly walking towards the top of the hall, on the step. Sweeping below, the so-called Taishang envoy was the teen wearing silver armor and a mask. What made him slightly stunned was that the teen prince he saw in the meeting hall was actually there. However, he didn't know his identity. Sitting down on the throne, only Zhong Ling stood up and bowed towards him. Including the teen prince and the silver-armored teen, they all stood up and bowed slightly, cupping their fists as if they had seen him. Yunsha Mountain Envoy Gashin greets the ruler. Blazing Flame Mountain Zhangzhe greets the ruler on the orders of my highness. The people who spoke were all wearing purple robes, but their ages were different. However, their ages were different. One was in his early 30s, the other was over 60. The voices belonged to the two people who spoke just now. Although their faces were calm and cold, their eyes were filled with uneasiness. That young man just smiled and introduced himself, Thousand City Alliance's Yang Shueishue. He stood tall and looked elegant. On the contrary, the silver-armored teen's expression was solemn and respectful. Taishang East Suppressing Governor Commander Kong Yao greets the ruler. Zhong Shou thought to himself that it really was this girl. The three people opposite him were startled. The position of Governor-Commander was a third-grade high official in the Taishang dynasty. The words East Suppressing should be his title. A titled senior commander was a great general who could command millions of elite soldiers, and was only inferior to a rank 2 commander. However, why was a high official of the central dynasty here? Kong Yao was also filled with curiosity as she looked at Zhong Shou, who was sitting above. She was shocked at how young this person was. It was really hard to imagine that this person was able to command an army at 14 and sweep several provinces of land. However, when she took a look at the luxurious decorations within the side hall, she couldn't help but shake her head. The tables and chairs were all made from 5 kilograms of red xian wood, which was worth as much as a grade 4 spiritual weapon. The sandalwood incense burning here was also the highest grade purple wood sky star sandalwood. Thinking back to the emperor of the Taishang, even if he ruled the 4 oceans and half of the central continent, he still lived frugally every day. The daily necessities he used weren't even 10% of what this side hall used. Kong Yao couldn't help but shake her head. Maybe this person was a genius, but he was too young and arrogant. As expected, what they said was right. Although the great victory 2 years ago had made this person a success, it had also destroyed him at the same time. Zhong Shou didn't know what Kong Yao was thinking about, waiting for the 4 of them to greet him. Only then did he ask coldly, "Why do you all want to see me?" When Gashin heard that, he didn't bother to think about why the East Protecting Governor-Commander was here. He bowed once more and said solemnly, "My city lord orders me to take back half of Longzhe province from your country." Zhangzhe was the same, his voice filled with coldness. Zhangzhe also came for that. Half of Fuyao province is the old land of my blazing flame mountain. The people miss their country and the ruler can't bear to take it and wants to take it back. Jun Shang, please be magnanimous. That white shirt teen smiled slightly, standing at the side and not saying a word. He still looked at Zhong Shou with a teasing gaze, sizing him up. When Zhong Ling heard that, rage flashed in his eyes. Then, he suppressed his emotions and calmed down. Thinking to himself, what is this? 2 rats shouting in front of a giant lion? Zhong Shou was speechless, looking at the few people in front of the hall. He felt really bored. In the end he laughed, coincidentally. I also wanted to ask your 2 city lords, when will you give the remaining half of Dragon Lake and Fuyao to my Gantian mountain? Gu Xian wasn't surprised, laughing coldly. Is ruler's words true? Do you really want to have a war with my Yunsha mountain? There are some words that I shouldn't say, but at this moment, I still have to boldly persuade ruler. The foundations of Gantian Mountain are hard to come by. Don't ruin it because of a moment of rashness. Zhangzhe's eyes constricted. My blazing flame mountain and Yunxia mountain will advance and retreat together. Her Highness Xiongyu also has the same intentions. Peace is the most important thing. If we really meet on the battlefield, it won't be appropriate. Lingyun's sect. Before he finished, Zhong Shou suddenly raised his hand and smashed an ink stone over. Zhangzhe instinctively wanted to dodge, but the moment his body moved, he felt a chill invade his body, unable to move. That ink stone smashed into his head. He felt his head explode, his head bleeding. He was unable to react for a long while. Zhong Shou, who was on the throne, was still expressionless. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Why are you speaking so much nonsense? If you are done, then scram. That teen prince frowned, unable to take it any more. He stood up once more. Ruler, my Thousand City Alliance also. Before he finished, he was interrupted by Zhong Shou. Thousand City Alliance, what is that? Chapter 460. Thousand City Alliance, what is that? The entire hall was silent. Yang Shueishue's smile froze on his face. After a short while, he recovered. He was still smiling, looking really elegant. I heard people say that your highness is really strong. Even 2 years ago, when you were in despair, you weren't willing to take a step back at all. Today I see that it is true. However, I, Yang Shueishue, still have to say these words. Yunxia and Blazing Flame City have joined our Thousand City Alliance half a month ago. Our alliance has 1274 cities, 27 provinces, and 30 million soldiers as our backing. Your Highness, please return the 2 provinces of Longze and Fuyao. 10 million troops? I am so afraid. Zhong Shou grinned without any warmth. You are really interesting. You were slapped on the left face and now you want to throw your right face over. Didn't I say that if you want to fight, then we will fight? Since that is the case, then from today on we are enemies. I will give you 3 days to scram out of Gantian Mountain. Yang Shueishue's pupils constricted in surprise. He didn't expect that Zhong Shou would reject. However, he didn't expect that Zhong Shou was so eager to have a fight with them. That was Zhong Ling. He also laughed coldly, his dark and cold eyes sweeping over. Not only did he not try to persuade his ruler, but he also gave off a bloodthirsty cold glow. It made one realize that although this person was old, he was a strong spirit master who had followed Zhong Weiran through hundreds of bloody battles. All of a sudden, he hesitated. Did this Gantian Mountain have other trump cards? Thinking for a moment, Yang Shueishue shook his head. Ruler is joking. The life and death of soldiers is a huge matter. Once the war starts, lives will be lost. How can you treat it like a game? He came this time with the intention of probing. He didn't think that they would immediately start a war. He only felt a little frustrated. With that, it seemed like their Thousand City Alliance was the one that was afraid to fight. However, although the Thousand City Alliance was strong, it would take a lot of time to arrange and coordinate the troop. It wasn't the time to start a war. He had an idea. Did Gantian Mountain see this point and was prepared to make things difficult for him? Even after Gantian Mountain reduced its forces, its strength was still stronger than Blazing Flame and Yunxia Mountains. However, due to the 5-year contract, they could only deploy their troops at the border. This was indeed the last chance for Gantian to turn defeat into victory. Arranging his thoughts, a bright glow appeared in his eyes. This Gantian Monster King was really decisive. At the side, Guoxian's expression changed and then he laughed coldly. Guoxian will not change a single word of Monarch's words. I will tell Monarch everything. Goodbye. Zhangzhe's expression was indifferent as he bowed. Since we can't come to an agreement, then there's no point for Zhangzhe to stay here any longer. "Oh right, my Xiongyu city lord has something to tell your highness." She said that it was the humiliation of Xiongba ceding land to her, and the hatred of her losing an arm. Every day she remembers it in her heart and will definitely. Just as he said that, he stopped abruptly. He only felt an extremely cold, killing intent suddenly strike him. It struck the depths of his mind, as if his head would fall to the ground if he spoke another word. His body felt cold and his mouth made some cracking sound. After a long while, Gu Xian barely opened his mouth to speak. When two armies fight, we don't kill the envoys. Is monarch prepared to kill the envoys? Zhong Shou was delighted. This fellow really had sharp teeth and claws. If it was any other place, such a person would have been killed with one sword. Just looking at him was annoying. However, in such a situation, it wasn't good for him to attack. He directly waved his sleeves and said, "Scram." He was too lazy to bother with such a small person. Gu Xian instantly heaved a sigh of relief, feeling that bone-piercing killing intent finally dissipate. He didn't dare to continue speaking, his footsteps slightly stumbling as he walked out of the hall. On the other side, Kong Yao found it funny, but she shook her head inwardly. Her feelings towards this Gantian mountain monster king were becoming more and more complicated. On one hand, she respected his strong personality, on the other hand, she looked down on the monster king's methods. He was too decisive and didn't leave any room for negotiation. If it was Gantian Mountain and they were stronger, then it was okay. However, even before the disarmament, when Gantian Mountain was at its peak, they couldn't compare to the Thousand City Alliance. Moreover, behind these three powers, there were the shadows of the Dongling sects. If it was His Majesty, he wouldn't be so unwise. He would use more experienced and exquisite methods to negotiate. Yang Shueishua's expression was unable to maintain the demeanor of a young master. He looked coldly at the person on the throne before opening his mouth once more. "Since the two of them have left, then there is no point in me staying here any longer. Goodbye." Slightly bowing, Yang Shueishua laughed coldly. "However, monarch, please think twice about today's matter. Our Thousand City Alliance goes against the strong, to avoid war and end the chaotic times, to let our dongling cities live in harmony. This is why we aren't willing to easily start a war. However, if we have no choice, we won't hesitate to send troops. However, if monarch is willing to return the land you swallowed a year ago to Yunxia, Blazing Flame, and Taoyuan City, our Thousand City Alliance can accept Gantian Mountain. At that time, monarch and your country will need a deputy alliance leader position." The grievances between monarch and the dongling sects can also end here. Halfway through his words, Yang Shueishua frowned and looked up, only to see Zhong Shou lazily yawn. Then, he looked down curiously. "Didn't you say you were leaving? Why aren't you scramming? I won't stay here for a meal." Yang Shueishua broke out into a laugh, not wanting to stay any longer as he turned around and walked out of the hall. Looking at this person walk out of the hall, Zhong Shou's brows furrowed deep in thought. A moment later, he tried to use true qi to simulate Zhong Shou's voice as he asked softly, "City Lord?" Yang Shueishua didn't think much, instinctively replying. Then, his entire body froze up. After a few breaths, she helplessly turned around, only to see that Zhong Shou's face was filled with a fox-like smile, making one want to viciously punch his face. "It is Yang Fan, Longxiang City Lord." Letting out a breath, Yang Fan said with his hands behind his back, "How is the ruler going to deal with me?" Although his identity was taken back, Yang Fan's expression wasn't ugly. Instead, it was filled with probing intent. "How?" Zhong Shou's eyes squinted. "I haven't thought about it. However, since Longxiang City Lord has high hopes for my Gantian Mountain and personally came here, then why not stay for a few days and let me do my part as a host?" Hearing this, Yang Fan could not help but burst into laughter. It was as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Unable to suppress his laughter, His laughter grew louder and louder. It shook the entire palace to the point that it emitted rustling noises. Even the tiles above were trembling. Ha ha! What a joke! What a joke! Since I dared to come here, how would I not be prepared? I think it's better for your excellency to not worry about the hospitality of a host. That laughter lasted for a long while before it stopped. Yang Fan's brows were slowly covered with a dark and cold expression. Forget it. If I don't try, I won't be satisfied. Kiki, City Lord Zong should know that what you shouldn't have done today was to call out my identity in this hall. The ancients say that when one is inches away, one can be the enemy of the country. If one is angry, 5 steps will cause blood to flow. City Lord Zong and I are less than 600 feet apart. I also want to try and see if I can take your life. Just as Zong Shou's brows rose up, Yang Fan's body suddenly exploded. Following which a silver-armored body the size of 2 people suddenly sped out from the thick mist and looked deep into the hall. It struck out. Looking closely, it wasn't a true person wearing armor. Only to see that his body was covered in a layer of silver talisman paper. On it were blood-colored runes like blood meridians. Vast spiritual energy flowed along the talisman lines. Although it was a paper man, its aura was no weaker than those grade 8 flood dragons that Zong Shou had seen in the evil spirit moat not long ago. Punching out with a fist, just the wind it caused all the red xianwood chairs in the hall to be smashed into pieces. Zhong Ling frowned, raising his hand, and a light flew out. It was a grade 6 spiritual artifact golden shield that blocked in front of the silver-armored man. However, in an instant, it was smashed into pieces by the paper man's fist. Zhong Ling spat out a mouthful of fresh blood as he took several steps back. However, the strong aura of the silver-armored man didn't decrease at all. Its flying speed was even faster than before. Kong Yao frowned, her hand pressing on her waist. Just as she was hesitating whether or not to help, she saw that Zong Shou's expression was calm from start to finish, not panicking at all. She instantly calmed down and recalled that this Gantian mountain monster king was the direct disciple of that old man longing 1.5 years ago. How was it possible that he didn't have any life-saving methods? Gantian Mountain had ruled for 13 years, so it was impossible that there weren't any experts joining them. This matter didn't need an outsider like her to interfere. To be able to decide victory and defeat here was a good thing for her mission this time. Similarly, his hand pressed on his sword. Zong Shou's gaze was like an ancient cold well, clear and cold, without any fluctuations at all. The one origin sword that he hadn't used in a long time silently entered the fire-een sword beside him. This sword was being nurtured in his soul and wasn't as rough as it was at the start. Within, there were dragon patterns flowing about. Just as the silver-armored man was 100 feet away from him, the fire-een sword in Zong Shou's hand suddenly came out of its sheath. His aura suddenly changed, as stable as the mountains and rivers, as strong as the majesty of heaven and earth. When the red-yellow sword light slashed down, it brought with it a slight wind that shook one's heart. In the next instance there was a sharp clang. The mighty sword Qi directly split the silver-armored paper doll into 2. However, along with the sound of the explosion, more than 10 lightning balls suddenly flew out from within. 9 mother and son lightning? Heh, so that's the case. Scoffing coldly, Zong Shou placed the sword in his hand back into the sheath. Then, he reached out and grabbed all the lightning balls in his hand. It caused the exploding lightning balls to swiftly calm down. At this moment, Kong Yao's mouth was agape. It wasn't because of Zong Shou's sword technique and spells, but because of the red-yellow sword energy. The sword energy was red-yellow, pure white longing. This was the energy of the Saint King. Chapter 461. She was stunned for a short while before Kong Yao came back to her senses. At the first moment she felt that it was preposterous, that was impossible. However, thinking about it carefully, that sword wasn't fake at all. She really saw the flawless red and yellow sword energy, the purest white long ing. The Emperor Martial Path was formed due to strength and also gathered due to strength. However, due to people's hearts being messy, the sword energy formed from the strength of a country was often really messy. It was mainly red and yellow with other colors mixed in. Only a wise and accomplished ruler would have a slightly different sword chi. However, she had never heard of someone who was as pure as Zhong Shou since the ancient cloud desolate era. It was said that only those saint emperors in the early stages of the cloud desolate era had such pure emperor energy. That was the ruler's moral character, pure and honest, the symbol of perfection. Not only was he loved by the people, but his ruling skills were also in line with the path of heaven and earth. All of a sudden, she felt that the heavens were unfair. His Majesty was always diligent and hard-working. During his 70 years on the throne, he promoted many talented people, righteous people to enter the imperial court. After inheriting the throne, it could be said that he forcefully pulled the chaotic Great Shang dynasty back from the brink of collapse. Now he ruled 24 states, 300-odd provinces. It couldn't be said to be a great era, but the country was peaceful and the people didn't need to worry about food and clothing. He was called the Emperor of Prosperity by numerous scholars, a wise ruler of a generation. However, even then, his Emperor Martial Path was just slightly purer than the previous one. She had personally seen it once. The sword energy was red and yellow with many other colors. Compared to Zhong Shou's, it was a far cry. Who knows what this Zhong Shou used to have such pure emperor energy? Within Gantian Mountain, it was true that the people supported him. However, in her eyes it was just a year and a half ago. If she wasn't wrong, within a few years, there would be a day when Zhong Shou would lose all the people's hearts. However, he didn't expect that the hearts of the people of Gantian Mountain would be so united. They weren't unhappy with this monster king who only showed his face once in a year. Could it be that in ancient times, the so-called Holy Emperor of the 3 sovereigns and 7 emperors in the Confucian legends was like Zhong Shou? Impossible, there must be a mistake somewhere. Or perhaps there was a flaw in her family's secret technique. He entrusted all the affairs to his subordinates and ignored government affairs every day. Building that so-called meeting hall and condoning his subordinates to fight was completely improper and definitely not in line with the Confucian way. There were also all kinds of absurd government decrees that were extravagant and unrestrained. How could such a person be worthy of the title Saint King? The heavens were truly blind. He carefully recalled the sword strike just now. Divine might was contained within. Although it was hidden and not leaked out, it was sturdy and powerful. Where was the slightest sign of weakening? White was gold energy, mainly used to kill. This Zhong Shou and Gantian Mountain's future would definitely be filled with numerous battles. Zhong Shou didn't notice the weird look on Kong Yao's face. In the last life, he had seen many Emperor Martial Paths, but he didn't know about the quality of the Emperor energy. Without a special spiritual eye technique, he was also unable to see it. He kept all the 9 in Mother and Sun Lightning. Then, Zhong Shou looked towards the ground. He saw a talisman paper that was sliced open lying quietly on the floor that was made of real gold brick. Puppet Spirit Descending, Grade 6 Talisman? No wonder it could hide from my spiritual sense. He reached out with his hand and the talisman paper on the ground flew into his hand. Zhong Shou used his spiritual sense to identify for a moment before shaking his head in disappointment. That paper man should have been formed by this talisman. That Yangfan should have used a thread of his soul to rely on this talisman. Even if it was destroyed, it would only cause some damage to his essence energy and wouldn't harm his foundations. The Puppet Spirit Descending technique was an extremely high-grade spiritual technique after a spirit master stepped into the celestial path. It could form a paper man puppet, similar to an incarnation of the body. However, its combat strength was just normal. However, that was also because Yang Fan's cultivation wasn't high enough. If a spirit realm expert used this talisman to descend his spirit, then the paper man would be a true spirit realm expert. Naturally, depending on the quality of the talisman, the time it could last would be different. The one in his hand was obviously a high-grade talisman made by a talisman master and could last for 7 days. If it turned into a talisman man like before, it could last for 8 hours. However, he was really surprised. That Longxiang city lord really hid his strength and was actually a grade 8 spirit master. To be able to take out such a grade talisman and 9 mother and sun lightning, his wealth definitely wasn't small. Zhong Shou laughed coldly. What ran in front of him was a talisman similar to an incarnation of his body. However, its master was definitely not far away, definitely not more than 100 miles away. Waving his sleeves, a dark wind flashed within the hall, like something had suddenly disappeared from the side hall. Within his sleeves, the 10-9 mother and sun lightning that he had just collected also disappeared. Zhong Shou turned around and looked at Kong Yao. Only then did he notice that this woman was in a daze. His brows furrowed as he said expressionlessly, "Governor Commander Kong, you said that you came on orders from the Taishang Emperor to tell me something. What is it?" While he spoke, he purposely used some true qi to shock her. Kong Yao also came back to her senses, looking at Zhong Shou. In that instance, her expression was really complicated. A moment later, she suppressed her emotions. "Has your highness heard of the spiritual wave? Do you know that there are numerous space cracks outside of our cloud world?" Zhong Shou nodded his head. Kong Yao didn't say much and went straight to the point. During the cloud desolate era, the spiritual wave dissipating was actually man-made. A few end-realm venerables personally did it, suppressing and sealing the spiritual energy all around. Because of that, they were able to seal the tunnels that the alien races from other worlds used to invade our cloud world. They also built 5 vast habitats to suppress the world river. Zhong Shou smiled. He was really clear about that. Half of these cracks were the work of the alien races, while the other half was created by the cloud world people themselves. Thinking about it seriously, he knew why this future Taishang army god came here. Kong Yao's tone changed, becoming really solemn. "Then does ruler know that once the spiritual wave rises, the cloud world will be filled with spiritual energy? The cloud world's spiritual energy will be extremely abundant. The heaven and earth spiritual energy sealed for 10,000 years will all explode out. Along with the suppression of the spiritual river in the wall, the many tunnels that were sealed 10,000 years ago will once again be unobstructed? At that time, even the 5 vast habitats won't be able to suppress all of them." She paused. Kong Yao also went into the main topic. "I am here on orders from the Emperor. I ask ruler on behalf of His Majesty, are you willing to be a vassal of our Taishang dynasty? Fight against the outside enemies with our Taishang? If you are willing, our Taishang dynasty will treat you as a duke and give you 1,000,000 high-grade talisman armor and soldiers to help you unify Donglin Cloud Continent." Zhong Shoxin nodded, not thinking much before shaking his head. "We can fight against the outside enemies together. I don't want to be a vassal, I am not willing to be someone else's subject." He scolded out in his heart. 1,000,000 high-grade talisman armor and soldiers seemed like a lot and was sincere enough. However, did he have to tell this army god? Argantian Mountain has already been eliminated by the level of equipment. In just half a year, the lowest standard in the army would be a water grade 1 spiritual weapon and armor. Moreover, this title matter needed to be taken seriously. Once it was set and Gantian Mountain belonged to the Central Dynasty, then in the future they would have their hands tied. There were many things that they couldn't do. He was the second-generation direct disciple of Tsang Xingdao, a true member of the demon sect. He was destined to be enemies with the Taishang dynasty. If he became someone else's subject and went against the ruler, then he would lose the righteous path. Both sides were enemies, and if he rebelled in the future, he would have a clear conscience. Kong Yao's brows furrowed once more, but she wasn't surprised. Just now, when she looked at Zhong Shou and the Yellow Emperor Sword energy, she understood that they were most probably going to return empty-handed. However, she still didn't give up, opening her mouth once more. Ruler might not know, but once the spiritual wave is abundant, the various sects and factions of the cloud world will also become stronger. They will definitely suppress the many dynasties in the world. During the Cloud Desolate era it was like that. The sects were all careless. My Taishang Emperor's intentions are that only if the countries work together can we go against them. Ruler, please think about it. Zhong Shou shook his head, not agreeing or disagreeing, directly changing the topic. Governor-Commander must be tired from coming so far. Why not rest for a few days here in Gantian Mountain? Kong Yao opened her mouth, wanting to persuade him, but in the end she kept silent. She knew that Zhong Shou was rejecting her and sending her away. Just as she was deep in thought, a cold scoff spread out from behind her. Your country is about to be wiped out, but you still don't know what is good for you. Your life-saving straw is in front of you, but you don't grasp it. How muddle-headed. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed as he looked over coldly, only to see that behind Kong Yao stood a person. He was around 30 years old, wearing armor. His face was like a knife, filled with disdain. Who is this person? Kong Yao felt a headache, saying helplessly, "This is Foreign Minister General Li Jila. He is a commander under me. Ruler, please don't blame me for being rude." Naturally, I won't blame him. Zhong Shou laughed, a cold glow flashing in his eyes. However, I don't like people who don't act well. Tell him to scram out of Hanyan Palace. Li Jila's face instantly turned ashen white, his eyes filled with rage. At the same time, roughly 70 miles away from Gantian Mountain City, in a dense forest, Yang Fan heaved a sigh of relief, waking up from his meditation. He wiped the corner of his lips, only to feel that his hand was sticky. Looking closely, it was stained with fresh blood. This was due to his soul being damaged just now. At this moment, there were 3 people standing beside him. One was a 29-year-old, beautiful and gentle maid called Tanxiang. The other 2 stood slightly further away, but they were all wearing armor. Each of them held a spear. One was called Feng Guang, the other Zhouwen. They were his protectors, grade 7 experts, the people he trusted the most. At this moment, they all looked over with worry on their faces. Yang Fan smiled, shaking his head to express that he was fine. Then, he stood up and looked towards Gantian Mountain City. Chapter 462. King, how did this trip go? Tan Xiang couldn't suppress her curiosity, walking to Yang Fan's side and asking, "Just now your soul was injured. Did you fight with someone and cause the talisman to be destroyed?" "What else can I do? Naturally I didn't get what I wanted." Yang Fan laughed, his face filled with unwillingness. "My identity was exposed by the Gantian Mountain Monster King, which was why I tried to assassinate him. In the end, I was killed with one sword. The puppet spirit subduing talisman was still okay, but the 10/9 mother and son lightning were a little unfortunate. This Zhong Shou is indeed Long Ying's direct disciple. His sword skills are amazing. As long as he is within the imperial capital, with his emperor martial path, he can go up against grade 9 experts." Tan Xiang's eyes instantly constricted. She already knew the outcome when Yang Fan spat out blood. She didn't expect that Zhong Shou's strength would be so strong. Even Feng Guang and Zhouwen, the 2 Xuanwu ancestors, had serious expressions on their faces. To be able to use Emperor Martial Path to go up against grade 9 expert. That also meant that the country's strength of Gantian Mountain hadn't declined, instead, it was slowly becoming stronger. What an unexpected outcome! His eyes were dark, but the corner of his lips curled up. Although this assassination failed, it wasn't like we didn't gain anything. That Gantian mountain monster king wasn't as arrogant and dumb as what others said. He reduced the troops to 3 million for other reasons, most probably to prepare for the spiritual wave. It won't be easy to wipe out Gantian mountain. Tan Xiang was startled, her brows furrowing. So what the king is saying is that this war is over? On the contrary, not only can we not stop, the faster we go, the better. Yang Fan shook his head. For some reason, I feel that the longer we drag on, the harder it will be to attack Gantian Mountain. This time we might have to drag in all the Lingyun sections. As he said that, Yang Fan frowned. The other sects were still okay. With Lingyun's sect suppressing them, along with the grievances of killing Zhong Weiran, they didn't dare to help Zhong Shou. Only Kongqi's sect was getting closer and closer to Gantian Mountain, pretty much inseparable. Who knows whether the sect leader of Kongqi's sect was crazy or dumb? Didn't he know that once Gantian Mountain was wiped out, Lingyun's sect would come to settle their old debts? This was their last chance. He also felt weird. Why did the Taishang dynasty title governor-commander run over to Donglin Cloud Continent? Did he want to recruit Gantian Mountain? If it was as he guessed, then this time they couldn't delay it. He was a little envious and knew that once he submitted to Great Shang, he didn't have any intentions of replacing them. Great Shang and the various sects of the Cloud World were enemies, and they didn't like people from other sections. They definitely couldn't allow Lingyun's sect to fully control Donglin Cloud Continent. Putting himself and Zhong Shou together, the Taishang Emperor would definitely choose Zhong Shou and not him. He needed to think of another way to make this matter fail. Thinking about that, Yang Fan laughed coldly. He was disappointed. When Gantian Mountain rose up, he thought that they would have one more strong enemy that they couldn't shake. Who knew that Zhong Shou would be so unwise? After offending all the sects, he would break his own wings. This person probably didn't expect that. His 1,000-city alliance would become so strong in a short year and a half. Thinking about that, Yang Fan suddenly felt the hairs on his body standing up. A feeling of extreme danger surged out from the bottom of his heart. Coming back to his senses, Yang Fan spread out his spiritual sense. He crazily searched all around. Moments later, he realized that something was behind him. A sword shadow suddenly pierced out from the void. The sword attack gathered coldness and stabbed right behind Tan Xiang. At this moment, Tan Xiang also vaguely felt it, and her expression changed. She hurriedly dashed forwards, trying to dodge. However, when she reacted, it was already too late. That cold sword energy that didn't have any spiritual energy reaction stabbed right into her right chest. After that, he used all of his strength to avoid death. However, that sword light sliced off her right arm. Yang Fan's face was ashen white, instinctively retreating into the distance. His eyes were filled with rage. He coldly hollered, "Protect the Emperor!" Instantly, 2 grade 8 purple soul tigers appeared beside him, roaring as they charged towards where the sword shadow came from. In the air, there was a giant red eagle that swooped down. Although it was only grade 7, it wasn't a spirit beast but a physical body. Feng Guang and Zhou Wen both reacted and dashed over. However, the sword light flashed and disappeared into the void of the dense forest. Who knows where it came from, but dozens of fist-sized black balls were tossed over, covering all directions. Yang Fan took a look and his face changed. Its 9 mother and sun lightning spread out. He wanted to use his spiritual sense to retract it, but looking at the spiritual energy fluctuations of the lightning, it was obviously triggered for a certain period of time before it was tossed out. The only thing he could do now was to flee, the further the better. The red fire eagle in the sky didn't attack anymore. He swooped down and hurriedly flew out of the area where the black spheres were distributed. Feng Guang and Zhou Wen's expressions changed as they turned around and fled. This 9 mother and son lightning came from an ancient cultivator cave. They were really clear about how power was. They could only crazily flee outwards. However, it was already too late. Dozens of 9 mother and son lightning exploded out one after another. Muffled thunderous booms rang out, bringing with them mighty astral winds that swept out in all directions. The space within a radius of 1,000 feet first shrank, then rippled outwards as if it had completely collapsed. Large amounts of energy swept all around like a flood. With the 9 mother and son lightning as the center, all the food within 100,000 feet was smashed into pieces. Outside 100,000 feet, there were numerous trees and grass that all withered. The 2 grade 8 protector beasts were nowhere to be seen. Although Feng Guang and Zhou Wen managed to escape by a hair's breadth, their 4 limbs and the muscles on their back had all melted away, revealing their eerie white bones. They were already heavily injured. Only Yang Fan reacted quickly and his situation was slightly better. However, that grade 7 red fire eagle was also covered in wounds, its expression dispirited. Yang Fan himself was also in a bad state. The loss of the 2 grade 8 protector beasts made his soul slightly dizzy, like he was hit by a hammer. He didn't bother about the injuries in his body. Right away he looked towards the direction of Tan Xiang, only to see that his maidservant, who was like a brother to him, had successfully escaped. However, her injuries were a little heavier. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. However, in the next instance, his pupils constricted. His eyes were about to pop out as he hollered, "You dare!" only to see a cold sword stabbing out from the shadows behind Tan Xiang without any signs. Just one sword and Tan Xiang's head was sliced off. Yang Fan's spiritual sense finally noticed that the owner of the cold sword was a girl of the same age. She jumped into the shadows, pretty much invisible, like she didn't exist in this world. Mysterious dragon sword. Extreme hidden shadow jumping technique? When the cold sword shadow stabbed out twice, he clearly heard 2 faint dragon roars. He knew that this was one of the 9 true dragon sword techniques of Old Man Long Ying. Only this mysterious dragon sword could be so silent before it exploded out. As for the latter, he wasn't sure. Extreme hidden shadow jumping, such a grade 9 heaven-shocking secret technique, could only be collected by the top 3 sects of the shrines and the 5 vast habitat. Who knows what cultivation method this girl cultivated? Not only did she retract her true chi and soul power to the extreme, but she couldn't sense anything at all. His aura was completely undetectable, and there was also a kind of divine ability secret technique that made people subconsciously ignore it. When she sneaked close to them, they couldn't sense her at all. Although her strength had just entered grade 7, it made one feel terrified. Then, Yang Fan suddenly thought of a person. "You are Zhong Ruoshui." In the past, the hidden guard commander beside Zhong Weiran had personally assassinated tens of important people in Donglin Cloud Continent. It caused all the same grade Xuanwu ancestors to change their expressions. It was said that the Gantian monster king returned from Cloud Saint City to Gantian Mountain because of this girl. Many Xuanwu experts were worried about this girl assassinating them, so they didn't dare to attack. This allowed that Zhong Shou to become so powerful. Who knew that today this girl was grade 7 and grasped such a terrifying secret technique? Using his spiritual sense to search for a moment, he once again lost track of that Zhong Ruoshui. Helplessness flashed across Yang Fan's eyes. What spirit masters feared the most was close combat with martial cultivators. If it was in the past, with his grade 8 spirit master strength, he could barely suppress this girl. However, at this moment, not only was his soul injured, but his 2 important protector beasts had also fallen. Unless he could lock onto her tracks, otherwise, he had no chance of winning. Gritting his teeth, Yang Fan jumped onto the back of the red fire eagle, not bothering about the two protectors below as he shouted, "Flee," and swiftly flew into the sky. Below, a ball of silver light suddenly exploded. Numerous silver-white needle shadows charged upwards. Storm Swift Spirit Needle? Damn it! Almost immediately, Yangfan placed a green-colored round mirror below. He spread out a layer of green spiritual light, only to hear a series of clanking sounds. That layer of spiritual light was struck and finally broken. The body of the red fire eagle was riddled with holes. Luckily, Yangfan's body was fine, patting the head of the red fire eagle and keeping it into his spiritual beast bag. Following which he took out a talisman filled with spiritual energy. After activating it, he turned into a red light and flew into the distance. I, Yangfan, will remember the death of Tan Xiang today. In the future, I will repay you heavily. Just as this voice spread out from the distance, a girl so beautiful that she was close to devilish appeared from the shadows. She looked helplessly at a thin black eagle on her shoulder. It's a heaven-escaping talisman. This person is really rich. What if he escapes? That black eagle opened its wings and screeched. Its eyes stared in the direction that Feng Guang and Zhou Wen escaped, like it was saying that there were two more prey there. Chapter 463. This Zong Shou is really rude. When he came down from the peak of Gantian Mountain, Li Jila was still furious. Before leaving, Zong Shou's disdainful gaze was like a thorn that stuck deep into one's heart. Before this, I was short-sighted and misjudged this person. Since he is so arrogant, why would he place us Taishang in his eyes? Scoff. Does this Zong Shou really think that Donglin Cloud Continent is in his bag? If this goes on, there will be a time when he cries. Just looking at the situation where the three city envoys worked together to ask for the lost land, one knew that Donglin Cloud Continent wouldn't be peaceful in the next few months. Thinking about how this monster king was about to be wiped out, he didn't feel anything and was so arrogant. Who knows what kind of expression that person would have when the Thousand City Alliance army attacked Gantian Mountain. Thinking about that, Li Jila felt that his anger had been vented. He really wished that Yangfan would immediately lead his troops over to charge over. Why didn't that arrogant guy die when that guy tried to assassinate him with the puppet spirit subduing technique? Jila, remember that as a general, you can't be so easily fooled and have your intelligence blinded. That monster king isn't so simple. Kong Yao had a lot on her mind. Turning around and looking towards the peak of the mountain, she was in deep thought. When Zong Shou slashed out with that sword, it was indeed pure emperor energy, based on the description of the secret technique passed down in her family. Such a situation should be one where one's aura was strong but kept within. Their foundations were really stable but they acted weak. What was this Gantian Mountain monster king hiding? What did he rely on in his hands? After thinking for a moment, Kong Yao's eyes gradually shone with a faint blue luster as she looked around. Following which she was startled, slightly surprised. Following which she suddenly flashed and disappeared from the spot. Wait for me outside the city. There is a place that I need to personally take a look at. Li Jila was shocked when he heard that and was about to ask. Kong Yao's body was long gone. He couldn't help but sigh as he walked out of the city gate. He was used to his boss's temper. From time to time, he would do some inexplicable things, which would later prove to be very beneficial. He felt weird in his heart. What did Kong Yao mean when she said that the Monster King wasn't so simple? Was there something that he didn't know? Did that person really have something to rely on? When Li Jila left Gantian Mountain City, Kong Yao silently moved about within the city. The city protecting formation here was really outstanding. It was said that a year ago they invited over tens of formation experts to personally set it up. However, to avoid wasting too many spirit stones and beast crystals, it was impossible to maintain the spirit array at all times. To a powerhouse of the 8th stage like her, It was as good as nothing. Only when she was 8,000 feet above ground, she started to be careful. The silver-white refined silver armor on her body had already turned black under her control. Coincidentally, she's and dark she was into the darkness as one. Although she didn't specially train in stealth techniques, she didn't make any sound when she walked. She easily avoided the eyes and ears of those grade 5 and grade 6 Xuanwu ancestors. There were so many experts of such a level on Gantian Mountain that it was surprising. The ratio between them and Xiantian experts was really hard to calculate. As for those spirit formation restrictions and warning talismans, with her family's secret technique, she could easily break them with her own ears. When she was halfway up the mountain, Kong Yao didn't continue to walk up. Instead, she walked into a cave. This place was pretty much hollowed out and numerous caves were built here. The alleys were connected in all directions like a maze. Kong Yao was really familiar with the place, like she was really familiar with it as she walked within. In just a moment, she was in front of a stone door, knocking out the guard and then casually pushing it aside. Kong Yao's breathing instantly stopped. Within a radius of 3,000 feet, there were rows upon rows of neatly arranged armor. Be it light or heavy armor, they were all there, giving out a faint spiritual energy fluctuation. Roughly counting the number of people in this cavern alone, there were 100,000 of them. It's grade 1 spiritual armor. Kong Yao didn't hesitate and walked to the side to another room not far away. When she pushed it open, as expected, she saw that it was all newly crafted armor. Her expression changed. Kong Yao was like the wind as she sped through the tunnel. There were a total of 50 caves here, of which 24 were within. They were all filled with spiritual artifacts and armor. There were also 6 that were filled with weapons. 2 million spears, 1 million knives, 1,400,000 steel shields, 1 million spiritual bows. The other warehouses were filled with various resources. When she pushed open the last 4 storerooms one by one, Kong Yao sucked in a cold breath. What was hidden here were pills. A full 1,200,000 bottles. Most of them were medicine, but there was no lack of cultivation pills. There was also a huge number of them placed together like they didn't cost anything. Kong Yao's eyes were filled with complicated emotions. No wonder when she looked down the mountain, she felt that the aura here was a little weird. This Gantian mountain actually had such a huge resource storage. This was just the first level of the warehouse. Then what would be hidden in the tighter guarded upper level? No wonder that Zhong Shou was so confident. With such ability, there was indeed nothing to fear. The reason for the large-scale reduction of the army was because of this. To fully equip the soldiers with spiritual weapons and armor, even the Taishang Empire didn't have that. Such a 3 million army, as long as the Donglin sects didn't interfere, they could sweep everything. In this small Donglin cloud continent, a strong country had actually risen up without a sound. An impulse welled up in his heart. He wanted to destroy everything in this place. She just needed to take a slight risk, and she would be able to kill this country that could unify Donglin before it sprouted. Just as her eyes were struggling, she heard a cold voice ring out from behind. "Entering without telling me isn't the way of a guest." Kong Yao was shocked, silently turning her head. She took the belt and shook it slightly, turning it into a soft silver spear as she pointed opposite. Then, she saw a teen with a cold expression standing outside. In his hand was a purple long spear, also a grade 9 spiritual artifact. Lightning flashed around his body. There seemed to be a snake-like thing hidden within the eye-piercing lightning glow, circling around the teen's body. Kong Yao's pupils shrunk to the size of a needle in that instant. Dragon. It was a grade 8 giant lightning dragon that had lost its body. It seemed to be a natural protector beast. The vast dragon aura surged over. The teen's eyes were filled with an ice-cold intent. "I am Zhong Shou. I have been ordered by your highness to wait here. Governor Commander Kong, please stay in my Gantian mountain for a few more months." Just as he said that, the spear in Zhong Yuan's hand stabbed out, bringing with it numerous lightning glows. Then, he charged forward with an indomitable will, charging forward at a crazy speed. There was only one spear shadow, but it seemed to be able to shatter space. That giant dragon circled above, giving off a shocking aura. This spear was maniacal lightning flash. One strike to shatter space. That spear shadow didn't care about anything, being pushed by tens of thousands of lightning bolts. It sped up 1,000 feet. It wanted to pierce through everything and destroy space. Kong Yao's expression changed once more. She also stabbed out with her spear. When the two spear tips clashed, even with Kong Yao's grade 8 strength, she couldn't block it. She was forced back by that surging and sharp power. The soft silver spear in her hand was bent and close to breaking. In the end, his entire body was smashed into the stone wall. After which, the purple spear shadow was still relentless as it continued to pierce through. Like a blacksmith forging, one after another, causing dirt and stone to fly. In the end, it pierced through the stone wall and was outside of the mountain. However, at that moment, the soft silver spear in Kong Yao's hand suddenly shook. It suddenly rebounded like a snake, directly aiming for the throat of the cold-looking teen. Zhong Yuan didn't care. In that instance, the entire Gantian mountain body lit up. All of a sudden, spiritual light flickered in all directions as streaks of abundant lightning-type spiritual energy converged. It caused the grade 8 giant lightning dragon around Zhong Yuan to swiftly swell, turning into 1,000 feet in size. Following which, with another spear, the soft silver spear was pushed aside. Following which, thousands of spear shadows flew like a storm, covering Kong Yao's entire body. Maniacal lightning 1,000 blades. In those few breaths, who knows how many spears stabbed out. It continuously clashed with Kong Yao's soft silver spear. Energy clashed. Although the surrounding mountain body was protected by the spiritual formation, it couldn't help but cause the mountain rocks to collapse, dirt and sand to fall. Kong Yao felt more and more helpless. Zhong Yuan's martial path intent wasn't weaker than hers. Using his natural protector beast, the grade 8 giant lightning dragon, he could go head-to-head with her in terms of strength. At this moment, merging with the city-protecting spiritual formation, its aura was even stronger. Pretty much every spear she blocked, Kong Yao's chest would feel a little more annoyed, like she wanted to spit out blood. There were many people around. There were also several auras spying on them. For a moment, they couldn't think of a good way to escape. This Gantian mountain city actually had such an expert. That lightning spear was shockingly quick. She could only passively face it. Sometimes the soft spear in her hand couldn't even keep up. She could only dodge continuously. If she wasn't wearing the grade 9 silver snow pattern armor, the spear wouldn't have been able to escape. Just the remnant energy of the spear would have caused her to be covered in wounds. She fell from midair all the way to the ground and was still unable to break free. In the end, with a loud explosion, Kong Yao's body was directly smashed deep into the ground, causing a mushroom cloud of dust. At this moment, the seemingly endless purple spear shadows. They suddenly retracted. Kong Yao heaved a sigh of relief, slightly adjusting her internal energy and wanting to take the chance to escape. However, moments later, she heard a low dragon roar. A strong gust of wind blew away the smoke and dust that filled the air, only to see that Zhong Yuan seemed to have merged into one with the giant lightning dragon. His expression was cold as he looked down from afar. The dragon aura spread out, suppressing hundreds of miles. His aura crazily rose. Just as the aura accumulated to its peak, Zhong Yuan's body, together with his spear, descended once more. This spear was the lightning dragon's spear. Looking out from afar, that spear shadow had actually turned into a dragon shape. Chapter 464. Gantian Mountain Peak, within the side hall that was already smashed into pieces. Zhong Shou sighed as he looked at the mess in front of him. Those chairs, apart from the one that Kong Yao sat on before, were still perfectly fine. The rest were all turned into dust. These were all top-grade red Xian wood. 10 kilograms could be worth as much as a grade 4 spiritual weapon. It was said that coming into contact with it could extend one's lifespan. The wooden chairs came from the hands of a grandmaster. When he bought it, he spent at least 1,000 grade 4 beast crystals. However, today it was all destroyed just like that. Not only these chairs, but within the hall, there were 4 wooden beams that were destroyed. Not to mention the gold bricks on the ground, they were all real gold. Looking at this side hall, if it wasn't repaired, it would collapse in a short while. This would also cost numerous beast crystals. On the side of the old priest Zhongling, he closed his eyes and acted like he was healing up his injuries. As for the frowning face of the ruler, he acted like he didn't know. He laughed in his heart. He knew that on one side Zhong Shou loved luxury and on the other, he loved money like his life. This time his heart was going to hurt to death. In the future when we meet envoys, all items worth 1 basic grade beast crystal and above must be moved away. The items used must be as cheap as possible. After coming to such a conclusion, Zhong Shou's expression finally returned to normal. Oh, he said in realization, no wonder when the emperors of the past met their subjects, they would always choose to be solemn and simple. That makes sense, as expected it makes a lot of sense. Apart from saving money, we can also get a good reputation. Even if it is smashed, we won't feel heart pain. Why not? Zhongling's brows rose up, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He finally opened his eyes. Ruler, I see that the envoys from Blazing Flame and Yunxia are all filled with energy. They are probably prepared to have a huge battle with Argantian Mountain. Leaving in a fit of anger, it won't be more than 3 months before their troops invade Argantian Mountain territory. Zhong Shou's eyes squinted slightly, following which he smiled. Great minds think alike. He also made such a judgment. 3 months, with the current speed of Gantian Mountain producing martial ancestor realm experts, Gantian Mountain wouldn't be able to do that. At that time, they would be able to increase their numbers by another 2,000 and at least half of them could enter the Blood Cloud Cavalry. 4,000 Blood Cloud Iron Cavalry. He didn't believe that apart from the top 3 shrines which sect could go head-on against the army of Gantian Mountain. The current Gantian Mountain would become stronger with each passing day. I know what you mean, priest. I'll send a decree to the Prime Minister later. To avoid being caught off guard, the spiritual weapons and artifacts in the storage can be secretly distributed to the army. Before he finished speaking, Zhong Shou's eyes flashed and he looked to the side of the hall. How is it? The shadow in that direction was originally empty. However, following Zhong Shou's question, the figure of a girl suddenly appeared. His expression was languid, as if he could never get enough sleep. His expression was slightly tired. I only killed 2 of his ascended martial ancestors and a day-wandering spirit master. He escaped using the Heaven Escape Talisman. Ruoshui couldn't catch up to him. Heavenly Escape Talisman? That person is really rich. Giving out the same exclamation as Ruoshui before, Zhong Shou was filled with envy and jealousy. This Yongfan, be it the puppet spirit descending talisman, Nine Mother and Sun Lightning, or the Heaven Escape Talisman, they were all good things that were hard to get even with 10,000 crystals. Only celestial realm experts could craft them. He also had 3 Heaven Escape Talismans, which he exchanged for after accumulating merit points for this year. Songqingdao Palace really had many good things. During this year and a half, Zhong Shou not only helped Ruoshui and Zhong Yuan find suitable cultivation methods and secret technique. He had also found a lot of treasures that could be used to defeat the enemy or save their lives at critical moment. The Heaven Escape Talisman was like that. It was said that in a breath, one could travel 10,000 miles. Within the celestial realm, one was unable to track. However, Zhong Shou didn't bear to use it. Actually, it was because he didn't have a chance to use it. Forget it. To be able to make him suffer a huge loss before the battle, that is not bad. Thinking back to when Yang Fan looked at him in the meeting hall, it made him feel really annoyed. Just as he said that, the entire mountain suddenly shook slightly. Zhong Shou was startled, following which he flew like the wind to the edge of the high cliff. Looking down, only to see dust cover the sky. Only to see that on the stone cliff 8,000 feet below, there was a huge hole. Zhong Yuan and Kong Yao were fighting in midair, all the way down to the bottom of the mountain. With just one look, Zhong Shou recognized that it was a storage room used to store low-grade pills. After using his spiritual sense to investigate, he instantly felt a heart-piercing pain, nearly pounding his chest and stomping his feet. He noticed that the inside was filled with dust and stone. The wooden racks where the pill bottles were placed had mostly fallen to the ground. There were more than 20 such storehouses on the second and third floors. It was something that Gantian Mountain recently developed a large number of alchemists to practice on. Actually, it wasn't that valuable. However, if they were sold, they would be worth 600,000 grade 4 beast crystals. However, today, due to the battle between Zhong Yuan and Kong Yao, it had turned into dust. This fellow was really a prodigal, not feeling heart-pained when a child sold his father's land. Jerk! Scoffing furiously with a green face, Zhong Shou used his spiritual sense to investigate. Only then did his expression relax. This storage room was buffed by a spiritual formation. When Zhong Yuan attacked, he purposely controlled his strength. Most of the pill bottles were perfectly preserved. Only a few porcelain bottles were broken. However, those pills were still in good condition. However, at this moment they were all mixed up in the dirt and stone. Later, he would order people to clean them up. They could still be used. As for who would swallow it, it was a mystery. Zhong Shou wasn't prepared to bother. The 3 million troops under him could only pray for themselves. Just at this moment there was a loud explosion from below. Then, they saw Zhong Yuan carrying the unconscious Kong Yao and flying to the peak of Gantian Mountain. Then, he casually tossed the silver-armored teen to the side. He cupped his fists towards Zhong Shou to express his intent to report to him. Zhong Shou looked at Zhong Yuan with an annoyed expression. I asked you to wait there and invite her to stay for a few more months. I didn't ask you to attack her in the pill storage room. When Zhong Yuan heard that, his expression didn't change. He calmly explained, this girl has a secret technique. Spiritual formations and restrictions are useless against her. Zhong Yuan is useless. It was only after this girl searched tens of storage rooms that I noticed. I was prepared to deal with her according to what Your Highness said. However, in the end, I noticed that she wanted to destroy our Gantian Mountain treasury. Zhong Yuan had no choice but to fight her. Zhong Shou held his breath. Then, he waved his hand in annoyance. Forget it, I'm too lazy to argue with you. Then, he looked at the silver-armored teen on the ground. If one were to talk about the most tragic person in the God Emperor era, apart from Shi Rulin, this last army god of the Taishang dynasty was definitely one of them. She was invincible on the battlefield, winning every battle. She maintained the last glory of the Taishang dynasty. However, in the end, she wasn't able to stop this 2,400 years old central dynasty from collapsing. In the end, she died in the hands of that god emperor. With 370,000 troops, she fought an enemy 10 times her number. She broke tens of formations. However, at the last moment when she saw the light of victory, she died from exhaustion. It was said that her corpse was stabbed with a spear. She stood on the battlefield with millions of corpses and didn't fall even after 100 days. When she died, the heavens and earth were blood red like they were crying for her. None of the subordinates of that future god emperor dared to get close. The ending was tragic, but it also made one plan. The reason why this woman led a lone army and was surrounded was because the Taishang emperor who escaped from Jingdo wanted to take over the military power of the three states that she controlled. She won every battle, never losing a single battle. In the end, she died from a knife in the back of the person she was loyal to. What was amusing was that, on the 10th day after Kong Yao died in battle, that Liao king who was expected to be the future ruler also died in battle. He was betrayed by his trusted aides. Tailing sect, which he relied on as a great wall, also abandoned him like a pair of worn-out shoes. At this moment, less than 27 years had passed since the day this woman died. Zhong Ling didn't know that this silver-armored woman had such a future. At this moment, he naturally didn't feel emotional at all. Instead, he frowned and felt that it was a little problematic. Ruler, this woman knows too much today. We need to keep her for a few months to avoid alerting the Donglin sections. However, our Gantian mountain is at most grade 6. I am useless. I am only afraid that after the ruler leaves, no one will be able to control her. After all, this woman was a Taishang envoy. Killing her to silence her wouldn't work. He knew that Zhong Shou would at most stay for a few days, which was why it was really problematic. The Central Dynasty side wouldn't sit still and watch this woman be captured. Zhong Shou also had a headache. From the corner of his eye, he saw a person flying swiftly over 10,000 feet away. He instantly smiled. With Zhong Bo here, what are you afraid of? Zhong Ling was startled as he looked up, only to see a white-haired old man land from the air. It was the previous Zhong Bo Zhong Zheng. Looking at Kong Yao, Zhong Zheng's brows furrowed. Then, he waved his sleeves and Kong Yao disappeared. I can help the ruler suppress this woman for a few months. However, the commotion today is too huge and we need to find an excuse to make people less suspicious. His expression was expressionless as he said, "This time I rushed back to help our Zhong family become the ruler of Donglin. After this matter is completed, I will still leave. There are too few high-grade cultivators in Gantian Mountain. At that time, the ruler will need to invite some factionless cultivators to help." The depths of his eyes were really complicated. He looked right at Zhong Shou, thinking that he was wrong at the start. Who would have thought that in the hands of someone he saw as trash, a branch family member, Gantian Mountain would be so prosperous. In just 2 years, they had the ability to go up against the sects and sweep Donglin. The seven-tailed Zhong clan not only held the highest authority in Donglin, there were also countless experts emerging from the clan in the future. Excuse? Just say that I am interested in this Kong Yao. I want to snatch her to be my concubine. Zhong Shou gave an evil smile. Then, he thought about how many factionless cultivators in the cloud world were worth him recruiting. Slowly, his mind wandered. Thinking about Xianyuan Iran, who was still connected to Pill Fountain sect, his expression turned solemn. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.